Chapter 477. Star Magic. Has Mistress Helena stepped in? In the Brewster family's territory, Elliot was looking toward the west with a hint of surprise in his eyes. That was Schubert's territory, and even though it was quite far away, he could still sense some magic fluctuations. He had just received news that Princess Irina had emerged from her cave, but who would have thought that Mistress Helena would step in so soon? Was the elven race about to undergo a major change? Immediately thereafter, the Tree of Life began to shine like a scorching torch, illuminating countless pairs of eyes. Her Highness has become even more powerful. If it weren't for what happened all those years ago, she would be preparing to inherit the throne by now, right? In the Bybilly family's territory, family head Vincent was looking at the green ribbon that was connected to the Tree of Life. Obtaining the approval of the Tree of Life was one of the requirements for becoming the Elven Queen. Those who couldn't obtain its approval didn't deserve to become the Elven Queen. What happened all those years ago meant that a battle between Her Highness and Mistress Helena was inevitable. I just don't know what the outcome will be, and who Her Majesty will side with this time. As for the young mistress of the Brewster family, as long as Her Majesty doesn't give up on Princess Irina, there's no hope for her. Whether this marriage is worth fighting for will depend on how this farce ends, Vincent murmured to himself with furrowed brows as he fell into deep thought. Within the Wind Forest, countless elves were looking up at this scene. Some of them were stunned, while others were filled with anticipation. The lofty high priestess and great elder of the elven race, Mistress Helena, was pitted against the much-loved and revered Princess Irina. A clash between these two was bound to have a profound impact on the elven race. However, most of the elves didn't know why the two people who stood at the top of the elven race had a conflict that escalated to the point of fighting. All of the elves in front of the Kroll family's castle were aware of this, so they were even more in awe and veneration. After killing Schubert, Princess Irina didn't back down in the face of Helena's interrogation. Instead, she challenged her to a duel. Mistress Helena was the #1 being below the Elven Queen, and she had already become a great magic caster 500 years ago. She had turned the tables on several occasions during the war among species, and was extremely powerful. Princess Irina had also left behind many legends during her travels across the Norland continent. She was only 30 years old, but she was already one of the most powerful great magic casters in the world. The green light shone upon her body, giving her a green light that was filled with vitality. Starry sky magic and holy light magic clashed head-on. The clash between darkness and light was so strong that it made people want to bow their heads. Even the members of the Kroll family kept their mouths shut, not daring to say a word. Everyone held their breaths as they waited for the elven race's battle of the century to begin. No one could predict the outcome, and no one dared to imagine what kind of impact it would have on the elven race. Let's stop. If the elves fight among themselves, those greedy foreign races will soon step into the Wind Forest and cause another calamity to befall this pure land. At this moment, a gentle voice sounded. The night sky dissipated, and the sun shone down upon the earth again. The green ribbon was severed down the middle, and the dazzling light emanating from the Tree of Life also faded. In the air outside the Kroll castle, a silver-haired elf in a long golden robe appeared. She wore a golden crown with a blue crystal embedded on her head. She was extremely beautiful, and it was impossible to tell her age. She had the innocence of a 12 or 13-year-old girl, the youthfulness of a 17 or 18-year-old girl, the charm of a 30-year-old woman, and the gentleness of a 40-year-old woman. Different people would have different feelings toward her, but her pure and holy aura seemed to be able to cleanse one's soul. Faint golden light enshrouded her body, and it was gentle but not piercing to the eyes. She wore a compassionate and gentle smile on her face, and her blue eyes were clear and transparent, as if they could see through everything in this world. We pay our respects to our queen. All of the elves knelt down on one knee with reverence in their eyes. Even in places even further away, all of the elves half-knelt toward the Kroll family as a sign of respect upon hearing the Elven Queen's voice. We pay our respects to our queen. Irina lowered her head as she put away her staff. We pay our respects to our queen. Helena hesitated momentarily before also putting away her wand and extending a salute toward the queen. Rise, all of you. The Elven Queen nodded before raising a hand, and a burst of invisible power helped all of the elves to their feet. Her gentle voice spread throughout the wind forest, and all of the elves also rose to their feet. Your Majesty, Princess Irina killed family leader Schubert for no reason. Please uphold justice for our Kroll family and uphold justice for family leader Schubert. Schubert's younger brother stepped forward and knelt down on both knees again as he looked at the Elven Queen with grief in his eyes. Schubert's body was lying right beside him. Please uphold justice, Your Majesty. All of the Kroll family members also knelt down again with expressions of grief on their faces. The Elven Queen looked at Schubert's body with a sympathetic expression, and she raised a finger, upon which a burst of green light fell upon his body. All of the bloodstains on his body and on the ground disappeared, and his head also returned to normal. However, he was still dead, and even the Elven Queen couldn't bring him back to life. Little Irina, why did you kill him? The Elven Queen looked up at Irina, and her voice was still as gentle as ever, but there was a hint of interrogation in it. Because he deserved to die. You know that I never attack good people. Irina looked at the Elven Queen with a serious expression, and her eyes were filled with stubbornness and determination. The Elven Queen looked at Irina with a hint of emotion in her eyes, and she fell silent for a moment. Just because you said he deserved to die, you killed a warrior who had risked his life for the Elven race on many occasions, a minister who had done everything he could for the sake of the Elven race, and the hope of a major family. Princess Irina, I need a more detailed explanation from you, not a subjective judgment. Even if you're a princess, you can't kill a minister for no reason. Helena looked into Irina's eyes with a gaze as sharp as a hawk's. Chapter 478. This elven law was created by Schubert, and it has been modified according to his wishes during these past few years. It's a law that serves him, and it's a tool for the major families to control the ordinary elves. Countless elves are struggling in despair, and countless elves have sacrificed their lives for it. If all lives are equal, then when the major families kill ordinary elves, is there any mention of a life for a life? Irina pursed her lips with a cold smile as she said, No. Then what's the point of having such a law? Just because ordinary elves have no right to object, you think you can entertain yourselves? Even the humans of Rodu aren't as filthy as you. That's why I killed him. He made so many elves homeless, and he caused so many innocent elves to die. He deserved to die. Irina raised her voice slightly with a mocking sneer as she said, Helena, do you know how many elves have left the Wind Forest to wander the continent after the racial war? They make up a fifth of all elves. Their souls are free, and they are the true elves. Meanwhile, all of you are becoming humans in the skin of elves. All of the Kroll family members lowered their heads, and some of the enslaved elves began to sob. Their sobs seemed to be contagious, spreading from the entrance of the castle all the way into the castle. All of the elves in the hall were already bawling their eyes out. The elven race is becoming more powerful, so this is a great and correct decision. The elven race has never been as united as it is now, and we will only become more powerful. We will be able to defeat all powerful opponents and defend the Wind Forest. Helena looked at Irina with a forceful expression as she said, This is a revolution that will determine the future of the elven race. There will definitely be sacrifices during this process, but for the entire elven race, these sacrifices will be worth it. Revolution? Become the elven race in the eyes of a minority like you? Irina chuckled as she pointed a finger at the enslaved elves and said, Did you ask the majority of elves if they were willing to participate in your so-called revolution? Are they willing to become sacrifices for your so-called revolution? If those scum of yours can become more powerful just by enjoying themselves, then what's the point of working hard in this world? Thump! All of the enslaved elves immediately fell to their knees, and many elves emerged from the castle before also kneeling on the ground. Your Majesty, please save your subjects and leave this never-ending swamp. We believe in the God of life, and view plants and flowers as equal to our lives. However, we have to endure the injustice brought upon us by our brethren, and even resistance is against the law. Even if you banish us from the Wind Forest, we don't want to continue to live with this endless humiliation. The lead dancer from before looked up at the Elven Queen with a pleading expression. Please, your majesty, to banish us. All of them, two to the elves, to the elves to the elven race, to the elves, and Elto the god of the wind. To the elves and elves to the Elto, the elves to the Elto the elves. You. The elven queen's eyes were filled with grief and heartache. With a gentle wave of her hand, specks of green light descended from the sky and landed on the elves' bodies. Their injuries were instantly healed. Thank you, your highness. All of the elves looked at the elven queen and Irina with gratitude in their eyes, and smiles finally appeared on their faces. Irina's expression also eased slightly. Your majesty. Helena's expression changed slightly, and she still wanted to say something. The elven queen raised a hand to cut her off and continued, pass down my orders. From this day forth, all laws regarding elven ownership in the elven law will be abolished, and all of the elves who have been forced to become slaves will be pardoned from this day forth. They will regain their freedom, and they will have complete freedom. All of the Kroll clan members and guests' expressions changed drastically. That's great. All of the enslaved elves were elated. This way, even if they continued to stay in the Wind Forest, they wouldn't have to worry about the same thing happening to them again. Your Majesty, you mustn't do this. If you do this, the hearts of our elven race will be destroyed. Helena was a little agitated. Little Irina is right. If we lose our freedom, then we are no longer elves. The elven queen looked into Helena's eyes and asked, Helena, what we want is the hearts of our people, not the hearts of a few. If we exchange the suffering of most of our subjects for power, then what are we protecting? Shouldn't we be protecting our adorable and carefree elves? Helena looked at the elven queen and slowly lowered her head without saying anything. Princess Irina, you killed Schubert without a trial. You will be imprisoned for a year, and your right to inherit the throne will be revoked as punishment, the elven queen announced as she looked at Irina. I accept. Irina looked at the elven queen and nodded. She then took a glance at all of the elves who had just regained their freedom, and a smile appeared on her face as she turned and departed. Thank you, your highness, the lead dancer from before said. Thank you. All of the elves nodded in unison as they turned to Irina with concerned expressions. Elves look better when they smile than when they cry. All of you look very ugly like this. Irina stopped in her tracks and turned to everyone with a vibrant smile on her face. All of the elves seemed to have been infected by the smile on Irina's face, and smiles appeared on their faces again. Farewell. Irina turned and waved at everyone with her back to them. Little Irina, you didn't finish your sentence. Why did you kill Schubert? The elven queen's voice sounded in Irina's ears. Irina's footsteps faltered momentarily before she continued onward. She also transmitted her voice. If someone was forcibly taken away from you when I was born, and they tried to kill me, would you kill them? I would. The elven queen's reply was very quick and firm. I didn't know who did this 3 years ago, but I do now, so I'm here to kill them. A faint smile appeared on Irina's face, and she disappeared from everyone's line of sight in the blink of an eye. Get up. You're all free now. The elven queen raised a hand to help all of the elves present to their feet, and golden light flashed, and she also disappeared. Let's go home. We're finally free. Some elves yelled with elation, and even more elves were elated upon hearing this. The elven queen's decree of amnesty was issued, and the wind forest was rocked by quite a stir. Irina returned to the cave and said to Snare, write me a list of everyone in the Magus Tower who could have been involved in the incident 3 years ago, as well as anyone else in our elven race. From this day forth, those bastards can live in fear. Yes. Snare nodded before quickly following her into the cave. Is Master Schubert really dead? Phyllis stood on her tiptoes and looked in the direction of the Carroll family with a curious expression. She stuck out her little tongue before also entering the cave. Why is a man taking so long to get changed? It's almost been an hour, and he still hasn't come out. At the entrance of the elven embassy, Yngve heaved a faint sigh as he glanced at the extremely beautiful female elf beside him. She must have come to the embassy for some reason. So he turned to look at the 2 human children playing on the street with a bored expression. Tisk, it's almost dinner time, and he still hasn't come out? There's a lot of people lining up at the restaurant. 10 minutes later, Ingve took a look at the time again, and he turned to discover that the female elf was still standing there, looking at him. Which family is she from? I've never seen her before, so she shouldn't be from the Billy family. Ingve narrowed his eyes as he appraised her. This female elf had golden hair, green eyes, and an extremely beautiful set of features. Her skin was extremely fair, and her figure was very tall and slender. Her breasts were very voluptuous, and her bottom was very perky. This young master really doesn't know what to do. Another 10 minutes passed, and Ingve heaved a faint sigh. That unreliable third young master had most likely fallen asleep after getting changed, and he was just about to go back in to call for him again. Chapter 479. Ingve appraised the female elf from head to toe for a long while. Regardless of whether it was her exquisite looks or her voluptuous figure, all of them were exuding a feminine charm. Her emerald eyes were also very seductive, and her blue dress accentuated her perfect figure. Even as an old man who had lost interest in women for several centuries, his eyes still lit up at the sight of her. However, such a devastatingly beautiful woman was able to scare him to the ground as soon as she opened her mouth. Third young master? Ingve turned to the female elf with an uncertain expression. The voice that he had just heard was none other than Blower's. Are you surprised? Ha ha ha. The female elf suddenly burst into raucous laughter as she looked at Ingve. However, even as she was laughing, she was still covering her mouth with her hand, giving her a very feminine charm. However, her laughter was clearly not something that a beautiful female elf should possess. Third young master, what are you doing? Why are you dressed like that? What a disgrace. Ingve's eyebrows were trembling with rage. The third young master of the Billy family was openly dressed as a woman. If news of this were to spread, his master would definitely be enraged. Didn't you tell me to dress up and keep a low profile so that the young mistress of the Brewster family wouldn't recognize me? Blower smiled as he raised his red-painted fingernails and said, the best disguise in this world is naturally to dress up as a woman. Young Mistress Sally would never think that I'm the third young master of the Billy family. Perhaps she'll think that you're the third young mistress of the Billy family. Ingve rolled his eyes and felt like he was about to faint. He shook his head and said, you should go back and change your clothes. You're not low-key, you're too high-profile. You'll attract a lot of attention wherever you go. Also, your voice doesn't sound right. If you want to get close to Miss Sally, can you not speak? Do you also think I'm very beautiful? When I looked in the mirror just then, I was almost mesmerized by myself. As expected, aside from Princess Irina, I'm the most beautiful person in this world, even if I'm a woman. Blower stroked his intricate chin with a hint of emotion on his face. He then turned to Ingve with a smile and said, as for my voice, you don't have to worry about that. As a prodigy, isn't switching to different voices a necessary skill? By the way, don't call me third young master. You can call me Shirley. Shirley? Ingve glared at Blower, who had suddenly adopted a gentle female voice. There was nothing out of place about this switch. Her voice was gentle, yet there was a hint of decisiveness in it, and it was crisp and clean. It wasn't the sweet and cloying style, and it was very compatible with his current style. Let's go. Didn't you say that the restaurant is about to open? Blower nodded in response. Go ahead. Did you plan to dress as a woman for a long time? Could it be that you like to dress as a woman? Or, do you like men? Ingve hesitated momentarily before asking a question with a serious expression. That's 3 questions. Blower pursed his lips. Please answer them truthfully. Ingve remained completely unmoved. I'm making a huge sacrifice in order to fulfill your plan. You should be feeling very touched at a time like this, not suspecting me of liking men. Blower shook his head as he looked at Ingve with a confident yet elegant expression. Besides, do you think there's anyone in this world who's worthy of me? When I was a man, there was no one in this world who was more handsome than me. However, when I dress as a woman, all of the women in this world paled in comparison. Sometimes, being too beautiful is a very troublesome thing. I'm destined to spend the rest of my life alone. There's no woman in this world who's worthy of me, and there's no man who's worthy of me. Ingve looked at Blower, who was in his mid-40s and looking up at the sky with grief in his eyes, and he was struck by the urge to use the sole of his shoe to measure just how shameless this extremely narcissistic guy was. However, there was a benefit to being narcissistic. At the very least, he most likely wouldn't write that he liked men. Whether or not young Mistress Sally would develop a favorable impression of him would depend on luck. However, if Blower were to like men, then the Bybilly family would be completely disgraced. By the way, young master, what's that patting on your chest? Is it a steamed bun? Steamed bun? TSK, how could I use something so low-level? This is a type of tree that I discovered in the wind forest. You just have to cut a hole in the tree, and a type of white sap will flow out. After some simple refinement, the sap will form an extremely elastic object that can maintain its shape. So you made this when you were in the wind forest, and you brought it to Chaos City? It's always better to be prepared. A successful person has to be prepared for all situations. Why would a successful person need to dress as a woman? That's why I'm more successful than the average person. I can tolerate things that normal people can't, and I can do things that normal people can't. But why do you look so excited? The strange conversation continued for the rest of the journey. Ingve had gradually accepted the fact that Blower was a woman, and he simply closed his eyes so that he wouldn't be bothered by it. Meanwhile, Blower's expression was calm and confident, and he didn't appear to be uncomfortable in the slightest. It was as if he were just going out in his normal clothes. The horse-drawn carriage stopped, and Ingve opened his eyes before pointing at Amy's nearby. That's the restaurant. Young Mistress Sally works in that restaurant. You can try to interact with her, but I think it's best if you don't interact with her today. Otherwise, you'll have to think about how to smooth things over in the future. Don't worry, that won't be a problem for me. Blower emerged from the carriage with a confident expression. He looked at the long line in front of the restaurant, and his brows furrowed as he thought to himself, why are there so many people waiting in line? For a restaurant like this to be so popular, it looks like it's not an ordinary restaurant. After a moment of hesitation, Blower made his way toward the long line. His slender waist and slightly wavy blonde hair attracted the attention of all of the customers in the line. Chapter 480. This elf's figure, looks, and disposition are all exceptional. If Sally gives off a cold and aloof vibe, then she gives off an arrogant and condescending aura. However, that aura doesn't make me feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, I feel like it's only natural that someone like her should have such a disposition. 9. 2 points, a little worse than Gloria. Meg assessed Blower in his heart. As for why her score was a little lower than Gloria's, it was most likely because he preferred obedient and petite girls. This girl was simply too tall. If she were on Earth, she could easily become a model or even a supermodel. Of course, that was just a type of admiration. Meg's heart was as calm as still water as he looked at her. Meg's heart was as calm as still water, but the same couldn't be said for the customers in the line. The sudden arrival of such a stunning beauty made many men involuntarily steal furtive glances at her. Some of them were even comparing her to Sally in their hearts. Compared to the aloof Sally, this young woman appeared to be more approachable. Beautiful elf, this must be your first time at Mamie's, right? A lavishly dressed young man standing at the end of the line turned to Blower with a warm smile, but his eyes were surreptitiously drifting toward Blower's long and slender legs. Heh, men. Blower rolled his eyes internally, but he didn't let any of this show on his face. It wasn't a bad idea to learn more about this restaurant from this guy. Thus, he nodded in a calm manner, displaying a hint of interest, but also a hint of disinterest. This was the most seductive behavior of a man. My name is Constantine, and I own 2 fairly large gem stores in the Aiden Square. Due to the fact that they're quite close to each other, I'm also a regular customer of Mamie's. Constantine calmly demonstrated his wealth before continuing with a smile. Young mistress, you have a very good eye. Mamie's is the most delicious restaurant in the Aiden Square. There's no other restaurant in Chaos City or even on the entire continent that can match the food here. Mr. Mac is a genius. Is the boss really that powerful? Blower naturally wasn't interested in this so-called gem store, but he was quite curious about the second half of the sentence. He didn't have any expectations for human food, but if he could eat something a little more delicious, then it wouldn't be a waste of his stomach. Why would I lie to you, beautiful lady? Look at this line. Most restaurants have only one line, right? But ever since Mamie's introduced the tofu pudding dish, the sweet and savory sides have been fighting over the flavor of the dish. Because of the conflict between the sweet and savory sides, the line has been split into two. The line we're in right now is the sweet side, while their line is the savory side. You must try the sweet tofu pudding later. Not only is it delicious, but it also has the effect of beautifying and nourishing one's skin. Constantine said with a smile. He was also quite tall, half a head taller than Blower, so he didn't appear to be at a disadvantage in the slightest. Don't listen to him, young lady. The savory tofu pudding is the true delicacy. If you don't eat savory tofu pudding, then what's the point of living? An old man in the line next to them countered. Their conversation immediately made the atmosphere between the two lines a little tense. However, the customers at the front of the line had already begun to enter, so the conflict didn't escalate. However, Blower's interest was piqued by the fact that neither side was willing to back down. Interesting. But what is this tofu pudding? It has the effect of beautifying and nourishing one's skin, so it's worth a try. However, for someone like me who has already reached the pinnacle of beauty, these things are almost useless, Blower thought to herself with a curious expression. In order to maintain his image as a gentle young man, Constantine didn't argue with the old man. Instead, he turned to Blower with a smile and said, "May I know your name, beautiful young lady? Would I have the honor of inviting you to lunch with me?" "There's no need for lunch, surely. I can afford it myself." Blower flicked her golden curls as she walked past Constantine and followed the line toward the entrance of the restaurant. Could it be that spring really has arrived for me? My heart hasn't been beating for many years. I thought that there was no woman in this world who could move my heart, but it turns out that I just haven't met one yet. Constantine felt as if his soul had left his body as he turned to look at Blower's departing figure. His heart thumped rapidly, and even his breathing accelerated as he hurriedly caught up to her. Even though his invitation had been rejected, he felt like he had left a good impression on her. All he had to do was find an opportunity to sit beside her and settle the bill for her, and they would definitely be able to get to know each other better. "Welcome." Yabamiya welcomed the customers into the restaurant with a smile, while Sally stood off to the side with a cold expression. Meg made his way toward the kitchen in preparation for the lunch service. "What a beautiful elf, Aisha. Is she one of your brethren?" Yabamiya's eyes lit up at the sight of the tall and slender Blower, and she couldn't help but ask in a curious voice, "I've never seen her before." Sally had also noticed Blower, but she didn't recall such a person. However, following the war among species, many elves had left the Wind Forest and scattered across the continent. There were many elves even in Chaos City, and she was most likely one of them. What a beautiful big sister. Amy was also looking at Blower with sparkling eyes. The omniscient door in his mind flashed with the information of all of the customers. Their avatars, names, races, genders, powers. All of this information was displayed on the interface. Meg glanced at it from time to time. With his superb memory, he was able to easily remember all of the customers' names and information. As such, he wouldn't even need to use the omniscient door in the future to identify all of the customers. Looks like there are only a handful of powerful beings here. Meg heaved a faint internal sigh. There weren't many customers at the 5th tier or above, and 7th tier or above were the most powerful ones. As for 10th tier or above, Meg had only seen 4 10th tier powerful beings, including Crassus, Julian, Novin, and Michael. Just as Meg made his way to the kitchen, the avatars and information of an elf suddenly appeared on the interface. It was none other than the female elf that he had given a score of 9. 2. Meg's expression instantly stiffened upon seeing her information. Holy fuck, holy fuck, holy fuck. Chapter 481. Blower, Shirley, elf, male, 25 years of age, 7th tier magic caster. The information on the interface was very brief, but it revealed enough information. At the very least, The word male made Meg almost jump up in fright. Please don't doubt the system's professionalism. The omniscient door is a high-tech door that incorporates the system's newest detection technology. At the same time, it's connected to the entire Norland continent's information network, so it can accurately determine the identity of each and every customer who enters the restaurant. The system's serious voice sounded. After a while, it adopted a negotiating tone as it said, however, if you're skeptical about the detection results, you can apply for a manual retest. The system will retest the target to ascertain his identity. Then let's retest. Mag replied without hesitation. He didn't believe it. He had seen countless women before, so how could he be wrong about them? Ding. Detection complete. Blower, Shirley, elf, male, 25 years of age, 7th tier magic caster. Confirmed. Ding. The manual service fee of 1 gold coin has been successfully deducted. Please come again next time. Holy fuck. System, you're charging me a fucking fee? Why didn't you say so earlier? Meg raised an eyebrow. You didn't ask. Besides, is there really a free lunch in this world? The system replied with an innocent expression. At the same time, a shameless emoji of a big round head with a helpless expression appeared in Meg's mind. 10086 free? Also, don't send me emojis. Meg rolled his eyes. The system was becoming more and more shameless. Please don't compare me to those unintelligent manual services. They can basically reject 80% of the questions asked, but I've never received more than one complaint, the system said with a serious expression. Heh, I'm the only one. Meg pursed his lips with a peculiar expression as he looked at the information. Also, system, why is your manual retest identical to the previous one? You didn't just copy and paste it, did you? Please don't insult the system's professionalism. How could the system do something like that? A solemn protesting emoji floated by before the system continued. This system used the omniscient door to scan him again, and this is the result? This is the so-called manual service for which you charged me a gold coin? You're cheating me. You're committing a crime. The omniscient door is mine to begin with, and if there's a problem with it, what's the point of re-examining it? Meg was a little annoyed. He didn't know where the system had stolen these emoticons from, but they looked really despicable together. Of course it's intentional. Originally, the omniscient door's detection was automatically triggered. Now that I'm using it again, I need to operate it manually. This is the so-called manual service. Host, just accept the fact that this is a male elf. This is the uniqueness of the omniscient door's gender detection. If the host's gender is wrong, wouldn't it be awkward if the host's gender is bigger than yours? The system's words carried a hint of mockery. Looks like this is the legendary crossdresser. When a man is flirtatious, women have nothing to do with him. Meg turned around to look at Blower, who was standing at the center of the group like a proud swan, and he couldn't help but sigh as he accepted the system's assessment. Is the host interested? The system asked. I definitely can't do something like taking advantage of a man despite knowing the situation. Meg refused in a stern manner. He walked into the kitchen to ponder the situation. A 7th-tier elven magic caster, hiding his gender to come to the restaurant. Could it be that he's here for Sally? He was aware of Sally's identity, and the elves were still searching for her. Now that a crossdresser had suddenly appeared, the first person that came to his mind was naturally Sally. After spending some time together, Meg was quite satisfied with Sally. She didn't talk much, but she was able to complete all of her tasks with high quality and quantity. She was a major contributor to the restaurant's smooth operation, saving him a lot of labor. Of course, Meg had to admit that using a 7th-tier elven magic caster like Sally, who had the potential to become the elven princess or even the queen, to do dishes and clean tables was a little overkill. However, Meg was of the opinion that it was Sally's choice whether she wanted to return or not. If she wanted to stay, Meg naturally wouldn't chase her away, nor would he allow anyone to take her away so easily. Meg set this matter aside for the time being. If he really was here for Sally, then he was going to give himself away sooner or later, and he would have to deal with him when the time came. The restaurant's decor is quite good, but there are too many people dining here from all different races. Am I supposed to sit at the same table as a demon? Blower looked around the restaurant. The elegant decor was quite stylish, and the wooden tables and chairs made him feel very comfortable. What was even more surprising to him was that all of the tables and chairs in the restaurant had very similar patterns, as if they had come from the same tree. Normal people wouldn't be able to notice such a detail, but it was clear that the owner had put in a lot of effort. Constantine stood behind Blower, occasionally chatting with him in a very enthusiastic manner as he racked his brains for ways to please Blower. As one of the most eligible bachelors in Chaos City, it had been many years since he had been so attentive to a woman. Blower only gave an occasional response. He wasn't in the mood to engage in idle chatter with a man who clearly wanted to fuck him. "You're so beautiful, big sister." Amy made her way over to Blower with Ugly Duckling in her arms. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also very tall, almost as tall as Blower's father. Ugly Duckling also looked up at Blower and blinked with a hint of confusion in its eyes. What an adorable little half-elf girl. Blower looked down at Amy, and his eyes immediately lit up. She had an intricate face, pointy little ears that were as white and translucent as cicada wings, long silver hair that was tied into twin ponytails, and a pair of large bright blue eyes. She was so adorable that he wanted to give her a hug. Silver hair, big blue eyes, and an equally adorable appearance. She looked so much like the princess when she was a child. "She's so adorable," Blower screamed internally. In terms of looks, the only person he admired was Princess Irina. Now, it looked like he had to add another one to that list. "You're also very adorable, little girl. What's your name?" Blower turned to Amy with a smile. "My name is Amy." A joyful smile appeared on Amy's face. Being praised by a beautiful big sister was very delightful. "Amy, that's a very nice name. You can call me Big Sister Shirley." Blower nodded with a smile. He looked up at Meg, who was in the kitchen. This human had such an adorable half-elf daughter. Just which elven maiden had he fooled? Chapter 482. After Amy departed with Ugly Duckling in her arms, Blower began to appraise Sally. Sally, the young mistress of the Brewster family. She's 24 years old and a 7th-tier magic caster. She's not bad-looking. Of course, she's still not as pretty as me. He had read a lot of information about Sally, all of which had been given to him by Yngve. It went so far as to how Sally had fallen into a river with Princess Irina when she was 7 years old. It appeared that the Bybilly family had expended a lot of effort in order to obtain this information. "I'm not here for a blind date. Life is already so short, so why waste time on relationships? I'm here to dedicate my life to the cause of the elven race's liberation." A smile appeared on Blower's face as he looked at Sally, and he murmured to himself, "If Yngve were to know that I'm here to recruit people, I wonder if he'd be furious." After a long wait, Blower finally found an empty seat. He looked at the 3 sinister-looking demons sitting at the table, and he was a little hesitant about whether he should take the seat. "Young Mistress Shirley, why don't we wait a little longer? There will definitely be 2 empty seats soon," Constantine hurriedly said as he looked at the 3 demons. He didn't want such a beautiful young mistress to share a table with 3 sinister demons. Furthermore, the 3 demons had only just sat down and hadn't even placed their orders yet. If Blower were to sit there, then he wouldn't be able to share a table with her. Yabamiya could also see Blower's hesitation. It was quite normal for young women to have such concerns. She smiled and said, "You can wait for a moment. New seats will be available soon." "There's no need for that. I'll just sit there." Blower made his way over to the table where the 3 demons were sitting and sat down on the empty chair. Constantine's mouth gaped open, and he heaved a resigned internal sigh at the sight of Blower. This was the first time that he had been rejected by a woman, and this feeling of defeat was quite foreign to him. "This must be young Mistress Shirley's test for me. I can't give up just like this." However, Constantine's fighting spirit was quickly reignited, and he quickly made his way over to the table next to Blower. The 3 demons turned to look at Blower in unison. All of them were tall and burly, and wore slightly tattered black armor, giving them quite an intimidating presence. Blower looked at them with a calm expression, and there was no hint of fear in his eyes. The 3 demons withdrew their gazes in boredom. One of them raised his hand and said, I want 3 rugiamos and 1 braised chicken and rice. Give me 3 bowls of rice. Me too, the other 2 demons said at the same time. Okay, please wait a moment. What would you like to order, sir? Yabamiya nodded with a smile before turning to Blower. Let me look at the menu first. Blower nodded in response. He was quite fond of this half-dragon girl, who had a very soothing smile. However, he was very picky when it came to food. Men also needed to maintain their looks. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to maintain their peak looks. Taking care of one's figure was one of the most important aspects of that. As such, Blower was very mindful of how much food he ate every day. Even when it came to meals, he was very particular about how much he ate. I've heard that human food is quite oily, so I'll just have to order some as a token of appreciation. I'll just have to eat again when I get back, Blower thought to himself as he flipped open the menu, upon which his eyes immediately lit up. The interior of the menu was quite surprising to him. All of the dishes had pictures attached to them, and all of the pictures were extremely lifelike, as if they were real. What was even more surprising to him was that this was the first time he had seen these dishes, but he was struck by the urge to salivate. Regardless of whether it was the rainbow yangzhou fried rice, the braised chicken and rice, or the white tofu pudding, all of the dishes looked extremely enticing. All types of delectable aromas wafted through the air. Blower had only eaten 2 small fruits for breakfast, and he suddenly felt his stomach rumble as he looked at the pictures. Calm down. Calm down. I can't lose myself just because of a few pictures. Perhaps the dishes on the menu won't match the pictures. Furthermore, the taste of humans and elves are definitely different, Blower thought to himself. He then raised a hand to signal for Yabamiya to come over with a smile, and asked, For elves, what do you think would suit our tastes? I prefer bland food. All of the dishes in this restaurant are very delicious, but if you'd like bland food, I recommend the yangzhou fried rice and braised chicken and rice for the main dishes, and the tofu pudding and ice cream for the dessert. Those are all bland and delicious dishes. Yabamiya introduced the dishes based on Sally's preferences. Then I'll have the yangzhou fried rice. Blower contemplated momentarily before nodding. The braised chicken and rice appeared to be a little sticky and greasy. Big Sister Shirley, the rainbow fried rice is super delicious. If you only order 1 serving, it won't be enough, Aimi said seriously as she sauntered to the side of the table. I don't have a big appetite, so I won't even be able to finish one. Blower shook his head with a shake of his head. According to the pictures, he would only be able to finish half a plate, not even 1 more. Really? I've never seen a customer who can't finish the leftovers. Amy looked at Blower with incredulity written all over her little face. Little Amy, just you wait and see. Surely, will never finish it. If I finish it, I'll definitely put on weight, and that's something I can't tolerate. Blower looked at Amy with a solemn expression. He was being doubted by a little girl, so he had to show her some sincerity. He didn't think that human food would be able to make her give up on her dreams and pursuits. All right, I'll be sure to watch. I'm sure you'll finish it. Amy also nodded with a solemn expression. She was very confident in her father's cooking. 1 yangzhou fried rice, please wait a moment. Yabamiya nodded before making her way into the kitchen. Blower looked around with a hint of surprise in his heart. He had thought that a restaurant with so many different races would be extremely rowdy and prone to conflict, but it was the exact opposite. All of the customers were focused on enjoying their food, and all of them were conversing with one another in hushed tones. There was no shouting or yelling going on in the restaurant. At the very least, this was the first time that Blower had seen the 3 demons sitting at the same table discussing where they were going to take their afternoon nap, and there was another hole in their armor. Chapter 483. The aroma of eggs and chopped green onions wafted through the air. All of the ingredients had been sliced into rice-sized grains before being distributed evenly on the plate. It was as if a rainbow had been plucked from the sky and sliced into pieces before being stir-fried. The colors were vibrant and refreshing, and there were specks of oil all over the rice grains, making them appear as if they were shimmering with starlight under the light. What a beautiful dish! Blower's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but praise in his heart. The vibrant colors, the ingredients that had been sliced into tiny pieces, and the golden egg that had perfectly encapsulated each grain of rice, creating an intricate and beautiful work of art. On top of that, this aroma is simply too alluring. The aroma of the eggs is so rich, and the aroma of the onions is just right to make me feel refreshed and refreshed. The vibrant green color of the onions is just like the sprouts of early spring in the wind forest. Aside from that, there's also prawn meat, winter bamboo shoots, and other ingredients. The combination of meat and vegetables is just right, and it's rich in nutrients and low in fat. It's perfect. Blower's eyes lit up, and before he knew it, he had already picked up his spoon. The three demons at the same table had already been served, but they were all looking at him in unison, as if they were interested in whether he would be able to deliver on his promise. Constantine was also looking at him. Of course, he was more concerned about whether Blower would be bullied by the three demons, and he was prepared to step in at any moment. Amy was standing beside the table with Ugly Duckling in her arms, looking at her with curiosity in her eyes, clearly waiting for her to start eating. No, I have to control myself. Half a plate of fried rice with meat and vegetables is just enough for me to eat for the rest of the afternoon. I can't eat even a single grain of rice. Blower also noticed that everyone was looking at him, and he thought back to what he had just said. He took a deep breath before spooning a spoonful of fried rice into his mouth. This flavor. Blower's eyes immediately widened with incredulity. The egg that was wrapped around the rice almost melted in his mouth. The winter bamboo shoots and green beans that had been sliced into rice-sized grains were crunchy and delicious. The egg-wrapped rice was sweet after being chewed, and the soft ham was mixed into the rice, as well as the aroma of prawns. All of these flavors were contained in a single mouthful of fried rice. The wonderful taste danced on the tip of his tongue. His taste buds were like flower buds that had been baptized by the spring rain, blooming and cheering. Blower felt as if he were reminded of his younger self. He loved to climb up trees and peek at the dazzling princess as she led a group of elves through the wind forest. He also wanted to join them, but he didn't dare to do so. As such, he could only peek at them from afar. It was a spring morning. He had just climbed up the big tree that he liked to climb when he was kicked down. The one who kicked him was the princess who was always shining. Then, he became one of her followers. However, he was a little special. He would only follow the princess in the morning when there was no third person. When other people appeared, he would return to the tree and quietly watch them play. Stuffy Dun was a nickname given to her by the princess, but only he knew about it. In his eyes, the princess was a godlike existence that couldn't be disrespected. He could only look up at her from afar, and just being able to look at her was already fantastic. He swallowed the fried rice, and a warm current flowed down his throat. He felt as if his entire body was warm, and the fragrance of the rice still lingered in his mouth. It's the taste of the spring of life. A hint of surprise flashed through Blower's heart, but he quickly recovered. If the spring of life had appeared in the outside world 50 years ago, the elven race would definitely have investigated it. However, after all of the major families took over the elven race, the sale of the spring of life had become a way for many elven nobles to make quick money. As long as one had the money, it wasn't strange to be able to obtain some spring of life in Chaos City. He just didn't think that someone would add it to his fried rice, nor did he think that it would become the finishing touch. The refreshing aftertaste made him want to take another bite. How could there be such delicious food in this world? How could such simple ingredients be used to create such a delicacy? I can't stop eating. Blower picked up his spoon and placed another spoonful of fried rice into his mouth. He had never tasted such a delectable flavor before. Compared to the delicious wild fruits in the wind forest, this fried rice was a completely different existence. It was as if it had some kind of mystical power, and he couldn't help but continue to stuff his mouth with mouthful after mouthful of it. It was so delicious that he simply couldn't stop. Half a bowl at most? Strictly control every grain of rice. The ratio of intake to consumption, those were his own words. In that instant, all of those thoughts had been completely tossed to the back of his mind. All that was left in his eyes was this Yangzhou fried rice. Ding! The fried rice smells so good. The porcelain spoon struck the bottom of the bowl, and a faint clink rang out. Blower praised with a smile on his face, and he faltered momentarily at the sight of the empty bowl in front of him. Then, for some reason, he stuck out his tongue to lick the spoon. All of a sudden, silence ensued, and Blower's hand also stiffened. He turned to the right, and the three demons were all staring at him with shock in their eyes. He then turned to the left, and a peculiar expression appeared on Constantine's face. In the end, he settled his gaze on Amy, who was standing beside the table. As expected, the smile on her face made him want to bury himself in a hole. How did I finish it all? And I even licked the spoon? Blower felt as if he were about to faint. He had just vowed that he would only eat half a bowl of fried rice, and not a single grain more. However, there wasn't a single grain left, and the plate was even cleaner than if he had licked it. He was struck by the urge to have another bowl of fried rice. A faint blush appeared on Blower's face, and he was struck by an inexplicable burning sensation. He looked at the empty plate with a remorseful expression as he thought to himself, "According to my calculations, this is already twice the amount of food that I need. Furthermore, eating too quickly could lead to indigestion. Big Sister Shirley, you finished it all. The body is a lot more honest than the mouth." As expected, no one would want to leave Father's cooking behind. Amy looked at Blower with a warm smile and said, "Do you want a tofu pudding or ice cream after eating the rainbow fried rice? They're super delicious too." The three demons at the same table also burst into laughter. They had initially been curious as to whether there were people in this world who could resist Mr. Mac's cooking, but it appeared that such people really didn't exist. Thus, they all picked up their rugiamos and braised chicken rice and began to dig in. Yabamiya also chuckled with a hand over her mouth. This elven young mistress really was quite interesting. Indeed, there were very few people who could resist Mr. Mac's cooking. "No, there's too much sugar in the dessert, and I'll get fat if I eat it, so I definitely won't eat it." Blower shook his head in a decisive manner. His face was burning with embarrassment at the sight of everyone's amused expressions. However, he couldn't help but raise his hand as he looked at the empty plate in front of him and said, "But please give me another Yangzhou fried rice." Chapter 484. I'll have another bowl. I'll use some magic to consume the excess when I get back, and everything should be fine, Blum thought to himself. Blower made up his mind, and he couldn't help but cast his gaze toward the kitchen with anticipation in his heart. Just what kind of treasure was hidden in there to be able to cook such delicious food? Who is she? Is she really a wandering elf from the Wind Forest? Sally thought to herself as she put away the plates. The elven race had the most wandering elves among all the other races. Prior to the war among species, elves had always loved to travel the continent. Elves liked to live a free and unrestrained life, so many of them preferred to travel. However, as the hierarchical system was implemented in the elven race, the lives of the elves became more and more rigid. They built castles and residences, and lived more and more like humans. However, it was undeniable that the elven race had indeed become more powerful as more elves settled down. The elves would be trained to cooperate in battle, and during wartime, they would be able to assemble a powerful elven army in a short period of time. This was a powerful deterrent to other races. During the early stages of the war among species, the elven race was almost driven out of the Wind Forest. The main reason for this was that most elves lived on their own and had no sense of teamwork. As such, they were almost completely defenseless against the armies of other races. Even to this day, Sally still didn't know which was more suitable for the elven race. As such, she was curious about the elves living outside the Wind Forest. What were their lives like? Were they happier than the elves living in the Wind Forest? That was one of the reasons that drove her to flee the Wind Forest. Perhaps I can find an opportunity to communicate with her, Sally thought to herself. She had to avoid the elves living in the Wind Forest, but she could still interact with the elves living outside. "Father, can I have ice cream?" "Just one will do." Amy's voice sounded from the kitchen door. Meg turned to look at her. Amy was standing at the kitchen door with Ugly Duckling in her arms. She rested her chin on the little orange cat's head and looked at Meg with a pitiful expression in her blue eyes. Her pointy little ears drooped down, and her lips were slightly pouted, as if she were going to cry if he didn't agree. Ugly Duckling was also looking at Meg with an innocent expression. It waved its little paws in front of itself. She's learned the body fusion technique. Meg's eyebrows furrowed. He felt as if his entire heart had melted. He was going to give her everything she wanted. Even the stars and the moon in the sky would be plucked for her. She's so adorable. Meg was just about to agree, but he was a little hesitant at the thought of what had happened the night before. Amy had eaten too much ice cream the night before. Even though Cece had already cured her, it still reminded him that he couldn't spoil Amy and let her eat too much ice cream. Amy can eat ice cream, but eating too much ice cream will cause her stomach to ache. So from now on, she can only have one ice cream a day. Are you sure you want to eat today's ice cream now? Meg looked at Amy with a smile. I can only have one ice cream a day? Amy's expression immediately crumbled, and she begged with a pitiful expression, Father, can I have one more? I only want 2 ice creams a day. No. Meg shook his head, and his tone left no room for negotiation. Spoiling a child was a principle that he had just learned the night before. Amy stared at Meg for a while, and after ascertaining that there wouldn't be a second ice cream, she heaved a resigned sigh and lowered her head with a pout as she said, Life is so difficult if I can only eat one ice cream. Meg almost burst into laughter. She knew that life was difficult, and she could only eat one ice cream a day. However, he didn't waver in his decision, and he smiled as he asked, Then what flavor of ice cream does our Amy want to eat today? Blueberry. Amy exclaimed as her eyes lit up again. Her pointy little ears immediately perked up as she looked at Meg with anticipation in her eyes. The little disappointment that she had just felt was completely wiped away. Blueberry? All right, then I'll give our little cutie a blueberry ice cream. Meg smiled as he made his way over to the ice cream machine and quickly made a blueberry ice cream before handing it to Amy. Meow, meow. Ugly Duckling, which had been placed on the ground by Amy, looked at Meg with anticipation in its eyes as it pointed at the ice cream machine. Ugly Duckling can also only eat one ice cream a day. Otherwise, it'll become an ice cream ball. If that happens, it'll be eaten. Amy held the ice cream in her hands as she looked at Ugly Duckling with a serious expression. Meow, Ugly Duckling ducked its head. Even though it was a little sad, it still conceded. Meg shook his head with a smile. However, he agreed with Amy's suggestion. If Ugly Duckling was allowed to eat as much as it wanted, it would only be a matter of time before it turned into an orange. As such, he still had to control what he ate. So, what flavor of ice cream does Ugly Duckling want to eat today? Meg made his way over to the ice cream machine and pointed at the mocha ice cream. Ugly Duckling shook its head. He then pointed at the vanilla ice cream, and Ugly Duckling still shook its head. He then pointed at the blueberry ice cream, and Ugly Duckling still shook its head. Chocolate flavored? Meg asked as he pointed at the chocolate-flavored ice cream. Meow, meow. Ugly Duckling immediately nodded with elation. It bounced into the kitchen before springing back out again, wagging its tail excitedly. Ugly Duckling, you have to remember that you're a duck. You're not a dog, so you can't wag your tail like that. Amy was a little disdainful. Ugly Duckling immediately stopped wagging its tail, but it was still licking its lips excitedly at the sight of the chocolate ice cream in Meg's hands. Eat. Meg placed the ice cream onto Ugly Duckling's little plate with a smile. He really didn't know what to do with these 2 little guys. Amy carefully made her way over to Blower with a smile and asked, Big Sister Shirley, this is the ice cream. Doesn't it look super delicious? Blower looked at the ice cream in Amy's hands. The 2 dark blue snowballs were very vibrant, and the surface of the snowballs was also very delicate, giving off a frosty aura. There was heavy snow in the wind forest every winter, so she wasn't all that interested in snowballs. However, the snowballs in Amy's hands seemed to be different from normal snowballs. What was blueberry? Was it a type of fruit? Would the snowballs really taste good with blueberries? Blower was quite curious, but he still shook his head and said, The color of the snowballs is very special, but I don't want to eat them. Chapter 485. Gulp. Not only Blower, but the 3 demons at the same table, as well as all of the customers around them, were also staring at Amy as she ate her ice cream. There was a saying among the regular customers of Amy's restaurant: "Don't watch Amy eat when you don't have any money in your pocket, as you'll be tempted to order more." "I want an ice cream with blueberry flavor. I only have 300 copper coins left for this month, but what can I do? I really want to eat that. Give me one as well." "No, I have to hold back. I only have 10 copper coins left in my pocket. If I order another one, I won't be able to leave the restaurant." Some of the customers were conflicted, while others were quick to order ice creams. However, Amy wasn't feeling smug about her actions at all, as her attention was completely focused on the ice cream in her hand. She held the ice cream in her little hands and slowly licked it with an expression of enjoyment on her face. She was so immersed in her delicious food that even those who were looking at her would feel a sense of satisfaction. Furthermore, she looked so adorable. It's just a snowball, but why does it look so delicious to her? It's as if she's tasting the most delicious food in the world. Blower's eyes slowly widened as he salivated uncontrollably. He had thought that he wouldn't be interested in the snowball, but he was becoming more and more curious about its taste. Just what kind of delicious food could make her smile so adorably? "Big Sister Shirley, do you want to know what ice cream tastes like?" Amy suddenly lowered her ice cream slightly as she turned to Blower with a smile. "Yes." Blower nodded reflexively as his mind was filled with curiosity about the taste of the snowball. "Then I can show you how to eat it." Amy picked up her ice cream and licked it again as she said with elation, "It's sour, sweet, and super delicious." All of the customers around them burst into friendly laughter. It was always very interesting to watch the interactions between Amy and her customers during meals. Is that even possible? Blower was extremely frustrated, but he couldn't bring himself to be angry at the sight of the smile on Amy's face. Instead, he felt like he would be committing a crime if he didn't smile. A voice sounded in Blower's heart before reverberating incessantly in his mind. "Should I get one of them to test the flavor? No, no. This snowball must be very sweet, and it doesn't look like a simple snowball. If I eat it, I'll definitely gain weight." Blower shook his head in an effort to rid himself of that thought, but he couldn't help but cast his gaze toward the ice cream in Amy's hand, and he gulped again. "You look so cute when you're conflicted." Constantine looked at Blower with an infatuated expression before beckoning to Yabamiya and saying, "Hello, I'll have 2 blueberry ice creams. One for Miss Shirley." "Okay, please wait for a moment." Yabamiya nodded slightly and turned to the kitchen. "Actually, I don't want to." Blower extended a hesitant hand. "You don't want it?" Yabamiya stopped and turned to look at Blower. Blower hesitated again. "Let's do as I say." Constantine smiled. He could tell that Blower still wanted to do it. "All right." Yabamiya nodded before turning again. "Change mine to the matcha flavor," Blower said quickly. After saying that, he couldn't help but raise a hand to cover his face. This was far too embarrassing. In just a short while, he had gone back on his words twice. "It's all right, Big Sister Shirley. It's very embarrassing to go back on your words, but this isn't the first time you've done this, so you should be used to it already." Amy looked at Blower with a consoling expression. What a pain. What kind of consolation is this? Blower raised his other hand to cover the other half of his face as well. If it weren't for the fact that there was still a plate of Yangzhou fried rice and ice cream waiting to be served, he would have already run out of the restaurant. It was simply too embarrassing to stay in a place like this for even a second longer. From today onward, I definitely can't say things like how much I want to eat, especially in this restaurant. Blower made up his mind. After slowly calming himself down, Blower put down his hand and resumed his calm expression. How could a handsome man like him be defeated by such a small setback? Embarrassing? No way. Big Sister Shirley, how many ice creams are you planning to eat? Amy asked with a curious expression. Blower's eyebrows twitched. He suddenly felt that this woman was only slightly less difficult to deal with than the princess had been in the past. In particular, that smile of hers reminded him of the devilish smile on the princess' face after every prank she pulled on him. That's impossible. There's no way the princess would have a daughter. There's no one in this world who's worthy of her. Blower shook his head to rid himself of the thought that had suddenly appeared in his mind. Perhaps there was one in the past, but it's a pity that he's dead now. It depends on my mood. Blower smiled. He had learned his lesson this time. Then you have to control your mood. If you eat too much, you'll really put on weight, Amy cautioned with a serious expression. Blower's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything in the end. This child's ability to deliver heart-wrenching was completely natural. Who did she learn this from? Sally doesn't know much about the elven race, and she hasn't seen the elven princess in the past 3 years. If this guy came from the Wind Forest, then he might know something, Meg thought to himself as he looked at Blower. He handed the ice cream he had just made to Yabamiya. He really hadn't taught Amy her sharp tongue. He had always taught her to be a kind and righteous person. If he had to say something, then perhaps that was her talent. Here's your mocha ice cream. Yabamiya handed the ice cream to Blower. Thank you. Blower expressed his gratitude before his attention was drawn to the green ice cream in his hand. The refreshing aroma of green tea wafted toward him, and his mind was reinvigorated. The light green color was like that of the sprouts of spring tea. Even the 1,000-year-old tea tree in the wind forest that had absorbed the spring of life didn't have such a refreshing aroma. What great tea! Blower couldn't help but praise. Aside from sleeping on trees, tea tasting was his second favorite. Not only did he enjoy the tea leaves from the wind forest, he had collected and tasted all of the famous tea leaves on the Norland continent. However, this was the first time that he had smelled such a refreshing aroma. Even the spring tea leaves from Vic Mountain paled in comparison to this. Should I grind the tea leaves into powder before adding them to the snowball? Wouldn't that create a bitter taste? Blower thought to himself. He hesitated momentarily before imitating Amy and licking the snowball. The snowball melted on the tip of his tongue, and the sweet milk flowed down his throat along with the refreshing aroma of green tea. It was as if the fragrant milk had been enveloped by the tea leaves, and all of the impurities in his stomach and intestines were washed away. The refreshing sensation immediately made him feel refreshed. Boss, you're wasting such a precious treasure. Chapter 486. Rage. Blower's heart was instantly ignited with rage. Such supreme-grade tea leaves were being used as desserts by the restaurant owner. What a waste. As such, in the instant that he rose to his feet, he almost couldn't help but yell. Thankfully, he managed to repress the urge to do so. Even though his voice was a little strange, it was still a woman's voice. However, this sudden outburst of criticism immediately attracted the attention of all of the customers in the restaurant. Was this beautiful elf trying to stir up trouble? It had been a long time since anyone had stirred up trouble at Amy's. Constantine was also looking at Blower with a hint of urgency in his eyes. There were many rules at Amy's, and one of them was that no one was allowed to make a racket in the restaurant. Furthermore, Blower was yelling at Mr. Mack as if she were going to exact vengeance on him. Amy's mouth was slightly agape as she looked up at Blower. She didn't understand why this big sister was suddenly so angry. Furthermore, she was criticizing her father. Yabamiya looked at the enraged Blower and was momentarily at a loss for what to do. In fact, she didn't even know why she was suddenly so angry. Sally looked at the mocha ice cream in Blower's hand and could roughly guess what was going on. She turned to look into the restaurant. Excuse me, do you have any complaints about the restaurant? Meg made his way out of the kitchen with 2 plates of Yangzhou fried rice and placed them in front of the 2 customers before turning to Blower with a smile. Who do you think you are? Blower could feel all of the eyes on him, and he looked at the smile on Meg's face. He suddenly realized that in his current state, it wasn't appropriate for him to use foul language, so he blurted out those words without thinking. That's so embarrassing. Blower wanted to bury his face in his hands as soon as those words escaped his mouth. Meg faltered momentarily before looking at Blower with raised eyebrows. This crossdresser really was something else. In order to maintain his ladylike image, he almost burst into laughter. Even when he's angry, he's still so adorable. I'm so lucky. Constantine looked at Blower with an intoxicated expression. Pfft. Yabamiya couldn't help but burst into laughter. This elven girl really was quite interesting. All of the customers were curious about what kind of argument was going to ensue, and they all burst into laughter. Blower's way of scolding someone was really quite unique. "Big Sister Shirley, what's a small biscuit? Can it be eaten?" Amy asked with a curious look on her face. "It's a small biscuit." An awkward expression appeared on Blower's face, but he still offered an explanation to Amy. He cleared his throat to alleviate the awkwardness before turning to Mag with an enraged expression as he said, "Boss, don't you feel guilty for using such supreme-grade tea leaves to make desserts? Do you have any idea how valuable these tea leaves? Even the spring tea from Vic Mountain can't compare to this tea." "I know." Mag nodded with a smile. These tea leaves were taken from the 8 Longjing imperial tea trees. After the system's optimization and cultivation, the quality of these tea leaves was indeed the best. Even in his previous life, when he was often dragged to drink tea with his old man, he had never tasted such good tea before. "Then why are you wasting it like this?" Blower had thought that Meg was only using such precious tea leaves because he didn't know how valuable they were. However, he didn't think that Meg was aware of the value of these tea leaves, and that made him even more enraged. "It's precisely because it's so precious that it's allowed to appear in the restaurant. That's why it's qualified to become an ingredient in the restaurant. Every customer deserves better. That's the only criterion I have when choosing ingredients. This is the best tea leaves, so I use them to make matcha ice cream. The ingredients in the restaurant are also the best." Meg looked at Blower with a calm expression. He wasn't enraged in the slightest, but he wasn't backing down in the slightest either. It was as if he were merely stating an ordinary fact. Could it be that he's telling the truth? That all of the ingredients in the restaurant are of the same caliber as these tea leaves? Blower looked into Meg's eyes. His black eyes were clear and bright, and there was something about them that made him believe in them. He thought back to the Yangzhou fried rice he had just eaten. Regardless of whether it was the rice, the eggs, or even the side dishes, they were all superior to what he usually ate. Moreover, this fellow actually turned a blind eye to my peerless beauty? How can there be a man in this world who can ignore my beauty? Could it be that he likes men? Blower raised an eyebrow upon discovering that things weren't as simple as they seemed. "I was wondering why the food at Mamie's was so delicious. It turns out that Mr. Mack has done his best from the very beginning. It's rare to see a restaurant owner who cooks so seriously, so this is definitely worth the price," Harrison praised. George nodded with a curious expression and said, "Indeed, just these ingredients alone are worth more than this price. I wonder where Mr. Mack got so many premium ingredients from. Regardless of whether it's that shrimp or that shiitake mushroom, they're all extremely rare items in Chaos City." All of the customers who were initially feeling a little embarrassed were immediately dispelled upon hearing Meg's words. They suddenly felt that spending a few hundred copper coins on such a delicious dish was worth it. "I admit that you have a point. These are your tea leaves, so you can do whatever you want with them." Blower turned to McGonagall with a serious expression and asked, "But boss, are you selling these tea leaves on their own?" Everyone turned to Blower with a hint of surprise on their faces. They didn't think that she would back down so quickly, and even buy tea leaves from Mr. Mack. "I'm sorry, but I'm not selling them." Meg shook his head. He didn't have any of these tea leaves. The system had only provided him with mocha tea. It was in the form of powder, so there was no such thing as tea leaves. "Name a price. I'll take it even if it's twice the price you're paying for the ice cream. Also, I'll take as much as you have." Blower was still insistent. He didn't want to pass up on such premium tea leaves. Furthermore, it was extremely distressing to see such premium tea leaves being used as seasoning in a dessert. "The green tea in our restaurant is only for mocha ice cream. We don't have a lot of it, so we're not selling it to the public." Mag shook his head. Double the price was not attractive to him at all. He warned, "If you don't have anything else to say, please eat your meal quietly. You are not allowed to make any noise in the restaurant in case you disturb the other customers. Otherwise, you will be blacklisted and banned from the restaurant. 10 times. I'll pay 10 times the price for your tea leaves." Blower gritted his teeth as he raised the price again. "System, how about we switch to selling tea leaves? That's 10 times the profit." Meg's expression remained unchanged, but he was already screaming internally, Please remember who you are. You're the man who's going to become the god of cookery. How can you change your mind for such a small sum of money? How can a man like you bend over backwards for money? The system said with a pained expression. Let's split it 50-50, Meg interjected. Chapter 487. In that case, I can sell it when the time comes, but I can't just sell it like this. 10 times the price is clearly too low. Half a caddy of tea leaves can only be sold for around 10,000 copper coins. If I were to auction it off, the price would skyrocket, and perhaps I could sell it for an astronomical price. Mag thought to himself, and then said to the system, System, give me 5 kilograms of tea leaves first, and I'll buy them from you at 5 times the original price. That's 10 times the original price, and I'll split it 50-50 with you. Put them in the closet on the second floor. Ding. 50,000 copper coins have been successfully deducted. Ding. 5 caddies of tea leaves have been delivered to the cabinet on the second floor. Please accept them. The system's elated voice sounded without any hesitation. Very good. A faint smile appeared on Meg's face as he shook his head at Blower and said, The restaurant has a rule that we only sell finished food. If you want to purchase ingredients, you can only do so through auctions. Perhaps there will be an auction for tea leaves in the future. You can keep an eye out for that. Auction? Not only Blower, but all of the other customers in the restaurant were also quite intrigued. The ingredients in the restaurant were very interesting to them. If the ingredients were to be auctioned off, they didn't know how much they would fetch and whether anyone would buy them. After all, for most people, it would be better to just eat the food prepared by Mr. Mac at Amy's instead of paying more than the actual price of the food itself. It was delicious and time-consuming. After all, no one could learn Mr. Mac's cooking methods, so even if they were to obtain the same ingredients, they wouldn't be able to cook any delicious food. As expected, all businessmen are sly. Blower quickly figured out what was going on. If this were to be auctioned off, with the quality of these tea leaves, if tea lovers were to find out, the price would definitely be 10 times the original price. This restaurant owner was clearly planning to use the auction to make a huge profit. Host, you're not playing by the rules. If it were to be auctioned off, the price would definitely be more than 5 times the original price. This is fraud. The system's enraged voice sounded. Didn't I already give you half of the price? System, as a system, you must know how to be content with what you have. Only then will you be happy. If you are too calculative about gains and losses, then you will lose the true meaning of life. Mag thought to himself. In any case, the tea leaves were already in his hands, so he had the right to decide when the auction would be held. Once more people noticed the supreme-grade tea leaves, he could sell them in limited quantities. That would also be a good way to earn money. Young mistress, if you don't eat your ice cream soon, it's going to melt, Meg reminded Blower before making his way toward the kitchen. Blower faltered slightly upon seeing this. She looked down at a drop of green ice cream that was slowly sliding down the edge of the snowball and was just about to fall off. She couldn't care less about her ladle-like demeanor as she immediately twisted her neck to catch the drop of ice cream. The refreshing and sweet taste of the green tea melted in his mouth, and he couldn't help but indulge in the taste. The texture was refreshing, and there was no bitterness at all. Although he felt that it was a pity, he had to admit that this matcha ice cream was delicious. No matter how high the price is during the auction, I have to get my hands on these tea leaves. Blower made up his mind as he licked the drop of ice cream. Soon, he was completely immersed in the taste of the ice cream. Looks like young mistress Shirley really likes those tea leaves. Next time when Mr. Mac auctions the tea leaves, I should secretly buy a portion for her. She'll definitely be very happy, right? Constantine thought to himself as he looked at Blower, who was happily munching on his ice cream. He rested his chin on his hand with a silly smile on his face as he looked on at Blower, feeling as if he were the one eating the ice cream. After finishing her blueberry ice cream, Amy made her way over to Blower and whispered, "Big Sister Shirley, you have to be careful of that man over there. I feel like he's harboring dangerous thoughts toward you." Blower glanced at Constantine, who was looking at him with a perverted smile, and nodded in agreement with Amy's words. "Don't worry, Big Sister is super awesome." Here's your Yangzhou fried rice. Yabamiya placed Blower's second plate of Yangzhou fried rice in front of him. Thank you. Blower nodded. He looked at the half-eaten ice cream in his hand, then at the steaming Yangzhou fried rice on the table. He hadn't eaten like this for many years. This restaurant seemed to have some kind of strange magical power that was able to make someone like him succumb to it. He had lost all of his dreams, and that was an extremely frustrating feeling. But it's really delicious. I can't control my appetite for now. I'll think about it after I finish eating. Blower tossed all of his internal conflict to the back of his mind as he continued to eat. Will the third young master be able to get to know young Mistress Sally? However, in his current state, it really isn't appropriate for him to get to know her. Otherwise, I don't know how to reconcile with her in the future. Ingve was conflicted as he sat in the horse-drawn carriage outside the restaurant. Burp. Half an hour later, Blower burped as he made his way out of the restaurant. He rubbed his stomach before turning to look at the restaurant's signboard with a determined expression and said, I'll definitely refrain from eating so much next time I come here. Come back next time, Big Sister Shirley. There's still a lot of delicious food waiting for you. Amy's voice sounded from within the restaurant. Don't try to tempt me. I won't fall for it, Blower replied in a calm voice. However, he couldn't help but swallow as he turned around. That little girl was simply too much of a cheat. Whenever she ate something in front of him, he would feel his appetite increase by several levels. She was an absolute scapegoat. Third young master, did you make any progress with young Mistress Sally during your trip to the restaurant? Ingve asked with an expectant expression as Blower climbed onto the horse-drawn carriage. She's quite good-looking. Even though she's not as good-looking as me, she's not crippled. Blower nodded before falling silent. And then? Ingve couldn't help but ask after a while. And then? That's all. Blower splayed his hands open. That's all? So you went in for almost an hour just to confirm that she's not crippled? Ingve stared at Blower with an incredulous expression. He felt as if his intelligence had been insulted. That's right. Isn't that very important? Think about it. If she's crippled, then she'll feel very inferior when she sees my true appearance. She'll clearly like me, but she won't dare to approach me. That'll make the mission a lot more difficult. Blower nodded with a justified expression. I think you only know how to eat. Ingve rolled his eyes. How did you know? Blower turned to Ingve with a hint of surprise on his face, and he couldn't help but praise. The food in his restaurant really is extraordinarily delicious. In particular, the rainbow fried rice and the ice cream dessert are the best things I've ever tasted in my life. Let's go back. Ingve was a little dejected as he turned to the horse-drawn carriage driver. He suddenly felt as if he had made an extremely foolish decision by pinning his hopes on this unreliable third young master. Chapter 488. The horse-drawn carriage stopped in front of the Elven embassy, and as soon as Ingve and Blower disembarked, a middle-aged elf hurried over to them. He handed over a letter to Ingve and whispered, Master Ingve, this is a secret letter from our elven race. It must be something important. The middle-aged elf turned to Blower with a curious expression. He had never seen such a beautiful young woman before. Why was she disembarking from the horse-drawn carriage with Ingve? Ingve undid the magic seal on the letter and pulled it out to read for a while. His expression immediately changed as he turned to Blower and said, Third, young Mistress Shirley, come with me. I have something to tell you. All right. Blower nodded before following Ingve into the embassy with a curious look on his face. What happened in the elven race? Blower asked after entering the room. Take a look for yourself. Ingve handed over the letter in his hand. Princess Irina has come out of her cave, but I'm in Chaos City. I can't believe I missed out on something so important. Blower accepted the letter, and he immediately clasped a hand over his heart with a pained expression. That's not the main point. Master Schubert of the Kroll family has been slain, and Her Majesty has changed the elven law to abolish slavery. All of these things are going to have a massive impact on all of the major families in the elven race. In fact, they could even shake our very foundation. Young Master Blower, these are the things that a worthy successor should look at first. Ingve was looking at Blower with an exasperated expression. Is that so? I think you've misunderstood the main point. The major families of the elven race only began to emerge after the conclusion of the war among species. After that, Helena's reforms led to the current situation where the elven race is divided into several major families. Are you referring to the foundation that we've accumulated over the past few decades? I think Helena and the major families have completely upended the elven race's foundation. The thousands of years of freedom are the true foundation of the elven race. Blower shook his head with a smile as he continued. Do you know why Princess Irina has so many admirers and supporters in the elven race? It's not because of how powerful she is, but because we see in her what an elf should be like. Noble, elegant, carefree, free, and unrestrained. Ingve fell silent at the sight of Blower's mocking smile, and only after a while did he put on a serious expression as he said, "This is the general trend. All races have to do what they want, and make the elven race more powerful. Only then will we be able to protect more elves from being enslaved in the next calamity. While enslaving them, you tell them that this is to protect them from being enslaved by others. Then, during the war, they will be sent to the front lines to protect those who enslave them from harm. Isn't this the great idea of the great families?" Blower looked into Ingve's eyes with a serious expression as he said, "Ingve, you've been through countless battles between species. I want to ask you, are the elves in the Wind Forest really happy? Even those lazy elves in the big families who are used to being served by others, are they really happy?" Ingve fell silent again, and Blower also didn't say anything. However, he was still staring intently at Ingve, awaiting his answer. "Perhaps you're indeed not suited to be the successor of the Bybili family." Ingve looked at Blower with a smile as he said, "However, you're suited to be a thinker. The Bybili family needs a thinker like you, and perhaps the entire elven race needs one as well. As such, I won't say this to anyone else, including the family leader. However, I hope that you won't say this to anyone else. At the very least, it's best that you keep these words to yourself until you're in the position that can change everything. There are some things that I only say to the right person." A smile also appeared on Blower's face as he slowly relaxed his tightly clenched fists. "Looking back at my close to 800 years of life, the most depressing period for the elven race wasn't when the Wind Forest was almost taken over by the demons and orcs during the war between species. Even then, the melodious singing in the Wind Forest had never ceased, and everyone was filled with hope and longing for the future. However, in the Wind Forest now, those joyful singing can no longer be heard. Picking wild fruits has become a job, and the days of sitting on the treetops for an entire day are long gone. Without the war, their lives have become even more depressing. That is indeed a very sad thing." Ingve's expression was a little forlorn. "That's why I've always stayed in Chaos City. Compared to the Wind Forest, this city is full of life and vitality. The soil of freedom is becoming more and more fertile, and I believe that a different flower will grow here one day. I just don't know if I'll have the chance to see it again. This is a very comfortable city, just like the Wind Forest in the past." A hint of a smile appeared on Ingve's face as he looked at Blower with renewed hope in his eyes and said, "If you want to help the elven princess, then you have to be powerful enough. All of the major families have already divided up the elven race, and even Her Majesty can only abolish one or two of the elven laws. At times like this, I have to use my beauty to influence them." Blower heaved a faint sigh before looking at Ingve with a serious expression. "In that case, I'll leave it to you. Let's hope that the Wind Forest can once again sing songs of freedom. I only want to hear those songs once in my life." Ingve also nodded with a smile. "The system has rejected your request and rolled its eyes at you." A string of words flashed through Meg's mind, followed by an eye-rolling emoji. "Are you happy to be cheeky, system?" Meg couldn't help but roll his eyes as well. It appeared that the system was still angry about the tea leaves. Meg was completely unperturbed by this, and he didn't feel guilty in the slightest. If he didn't scam the system, he wouldn't be able to make a lot of money. "All right, looks like you don't want to earn this money. In that case, I'll have to use Amy's music box. Isn't there a dozen or so nursery rhymes in there? Even though the styles are a little mixed, it's still all right, Meg said calmly as he prepared to get the music box. Host, how can a classy restaurant play music like Gokuraku Jodo while the customers are eating? If their legs are shaking while they're eating, how can they enjoy their meal? This is a disaster. The system's voice was tinged with a hint of grief. What does that have to do with anything? It fully showcases the uniqueness of our restaurant, and it's a completely different experience for the customers, Meg replied with a nonchalant expression. The system said in a serious voice, the god of cookery restaurant has to pay attention to every detail. Just the right amount of music can greatly enhance the style of the restaurant. Different restaurants have different musical pairings, and this pairing has to be based on, all right, Mr. Vegetable, I'll have a J. Cho music box first. How much is it? Meg cut off the system. Chapter 489. Holy fuck. System, how dare you say you're not using NetEase? Can't you just go to QQ Music and get a membership? Meg couldn't help but complain. You're a Yoon Village resident alive and a Yoon Village ghost dead, the system said solemnly. I'll pay for the membership. Meg pursed his lips. I'll do it right away. The system's cheerful voice sounded. Motherfucker. Meg cursed in his heart. After a round of intense bargaining, Meg finally bought 1,000 classical songs from the system at the price of 1 membership and 3,000 copper coins, as well as Jay Chou's complete music package, all of which had lossless sound quality. Jay Chou released a new song recently? Meg looked at the music list on the tablet in his hand. The song at the top was Leave Me Alone If You Don't Love Me, but it was gray. It's not out yet. It's just a preview. If you want to buy it after it's out, you can pay more. The system will provide lossless sound quality music, and you'll definitely be satisfied, the system said slyly. I'm the one who gave you the membership. Meg rolled his eyes. However, the song title was a little arrogant. He was quite curious about what kind of new song this man, who had accompanied him throughout his youth, would release. Let's try out the sound system first. Meg didn't think too much about it. He got up and smiled at Amy, who was chasing Ugly Duckling around the restaurant. Amy, I'm going to play the music. Don't be scared. It's just an oversized music box. Sally and Yabamiya had both gone out, so there was only Amy, and Ugly Duckling in the restaurant. Is it an oversized music box? Mi's eyes were full of curiosity and expectation as she looked around. Then let's listen to Alice first. Meg tapped the screen lightly. As a 10th grade amateur piano player, this was the first piano piece he learned when he was a child. Back then, with the excuse of cultivating his interests and hobbies, he was forced by his mother to learn a lot of random things. Although it turned out that these things were useless when he grew up, it was true that learning a musical instrument could improve one's temperament. The soothing and beautiful sound of the piano rang out. This divine tune, which was widely used in the end of classes, phone calls, listening tests, and 10,086 manual service waiting tones, did indeed have a unique magical power. The light and lively tune made people feel more relaxed. The stereo effect of the omnidirectional surround sound was indeed incomparable to ordinary sound systems. The delicate sound quality was impeccable even to Meg. As the music rang in their ears, they suddenly felt as if they were sitting in a concert hall, facing the great musician alone and listening to his moving piano solo. The corners of Meg's mouth curled up slightly. It was as if he could see his little self sitting on a long chair, laboriously tapping on the piano keys, while his mother sat behind him, quietly watching him. At that time, they weren't so busy. Although they were a little strict, at least they were still there. Hee. Amy's laughter interrupted Meg's train of thought, and he turned to find that she was dancing with Ugly Duckling to the music. Her dance was a little clumsy and very casual, but the two of them were so adorable that even Meg couldn't help but burst into laughter. Father, so our restaurant has turned into an oversized music box? We live in a music box, and the customers eat in a music box, Amy asked excitedly as she looked at Meg. Yes, that's right. Music makes people happy, so we have to impart this joy and make our customers happy as well. Meg nodded with a smile. He looked at Amy, and his heart was filled with satisfaction. He cherished the time that he could still spend with her. At the very least, he wouldn't regret it in the future. Meg lowered the volume of the music slightly and placed the tablet on the counter. The beautiful music was enjoyable, but after all, he wasn't opening a concert hall. Instead, he was opening a restaurant, and the food was what he really wanted to show his customers. Music could be a side dish, but he couldn't let it steal the limelight of the food and distract the customers from eating. Xiaomi, father still has something fun to show you. Come upstairs with me. Mag stroked Amy's hair with a smile before picking her up in his arms. He also scooped Ugly Duckling into his arms before making his way upstairs. Something fun? Father, what is it? Amy's eyes lit up with curiosity. You'll find out soon. Meg smiled as he carried Amy to the second floor and gently pushed open the door to the room on the second floor. The door slowly opened, and a children's playground filled with toys and amusement facilities appeared before their eyes. Wow! Amy's eyes widened with incredulity as she stared at the things in the room. Meow, Ugly Duckling's eyes also lit up with excitement. Father, is this really for Amy? Amy turned to Meg with incredulity in her eyes. Of course. This is a playground specially prepared for Amy. You can invite other children to play at home in the future. Meg nodded with a smile. When the restaurant was busy at night, Amy would often lie behind the counter in boredom, waiting for the opening hours to end. Meg's heart ached for her, and this was why he had spent so many gold coins to make the system a playground. Father, you're the best. Amy hugged Meg's neck and kissed him on the cheek. She didn't have any toys in the past, but now she even had a playground. In the future, she could invite Jessica, Daphne, and the others to play, and they would definitely love it. This is just a small playground. Father will build a bigger one for you in the future. There will be super big Ferris wheels, merry-go-rounds, and roller coasters. It will be 1,000 times, no, 10,000 times bigger than this playground. After being kissed and praised by Amy, Mag felt that his ego had swelled, and he said confidently, "It's fine." Really? Amy's eyes lit up immediately. Although she didn't know what the things her father was talking about were, she already felt that this playground was very big. If it was 1,000 times, no, 10,000 times bigger than this playground, then it would definitely be super big and super fun. Of course it's real. Father will build one for Amy when he makes a lot of money. Meg also suddenly realized that he seemed to have boasted, but seeing Amy's expectant eyes, how could he bear to take back his words? He nodded seriously. Chapter 490. I've been out for more than a month. I wonder how the elven race is doing, and if my mother is worried about me. Sally walked on the street, preparing to go back to the Gaia Inn to tidy up her room. Although the wages of the inn were pitiful, the inn provided a place to stay, and the owner was very nice, so she insisted on working 2 jobs a day. Who was that elf just now? Did she really grow up outside the Wind Forest? Ever since they were young, they had always said that the elves outside the Wind Forest were all abandoned by the god of life. They hadn't been baptized by the god of life, and hadn't been recognized by the god of life. That was why they were ugly and weak. But that elf today, I can feel that she's not weaker than me, and she's very beautiful. Who's lying? Sally was very confused. She hadn't met any other elves in the past month, and after discovering this, she was suddenly interested in finding out more. Maybe I can talk to her next time. Princess Irina had once said that the outside world was completely different from what they said. This sentence was deeply engraved in her heart, and she made up her mind. I'm going to find Luna and go to Mamie's for dinner later. Should I wear men's clothes today? Or women's clothes? In the city lord's castle, Vivian looked at the clothes in the wardrobe and fell into deep thought. I've got it. I'll wear men's clothes. That way, Mr. Mac will give up, and he won't have to flirt with Luna's heart again. After a long while, Vivian snapped her fingers and then picked a loose set of men's clothes from the wardrobe. Ms. Luna, Amy is so awesome. Can I learn magic too? I want to learn it so much. You can all learn magic, but you're still young. You have to learn the basics first, and then you can take the magic test next year. Those who pass can officially start learning magic. Luna smiled as she patted the little girl's head and felt a little helpless. Today, Amy had defeated the powerful Magus Tower on her own and instantly became the little hero of Chaos School. At the same time, many students became very interested in learning magic, including the children in the lower grades. She had already had this conversation more than 10 times, and her enthusiasm was much higher than in previous years. The teachers of the Magic Academy should be very happy this year. Little Amy is so amazing. She's only been learning magic for a month, and she's already defeated such a powerful opponent. Mr. Meg's judgment was right. Moreover, he is indeed a genius. Luna looked out of the window with a smile on her face. Today, she had received a letter from Rodu. According to her grandfather, he had demonstrated that the decimal system was indeed more convenient and efficient than the current system in the Roth Empire, and he was pushing for a reform of the decimal system. He wanted her to invite Meg to Rodu again, and if Meg still refused, then he would most likely come to Chaos City to meet him in person. Novin, I heard that you've been preparing to expand Chaos School recently? The conference at the Magic Academy hadn't concluded yet, so Crassus and Novin left early. As soon as they walked out of the conference room, Crassus turned to Novin with a smile. That's right. Chaos School isn't small, but compared to the entire Chaos City, there are still many children who don't have the opportunity to attend school, especially those children from poor families. Studying is supposed to be a chance for them to leave the swamp of poverty, but they can't get this chance. Novin nodded. How big are you planning to expand it? Crassus asked. I'm still communicating with the City Lord's castle to see how much money they're willing to allocate. However, it hasn't been easy for Michael in the past 2 years. The construction of all of the facilities in Chaos City has basically emptied the City Lord's castle's finances, so they probably won't be able to fork out much money for Chaos School this time. Novin's brows furrowed with concern, and the wrinkles on his face seemed to have deepened. Let's go. I'll show you something. Crassus looked at Novin and led the way. What is it? Novin asked. You'll know when we get there. Crassus didn't even turn around. What's this? Novin followed Crassus into a room on the first floor of a Magic Academy building, and was perplexed at the sight of a pile of wooden boxes that almost filled the entire room. Open it and take a look. Crassus kept him in suspense with a smile. Novin raised a hand toward a wooden box beside him, and the lid of the wooden box was immediately opened. Golden light shone from within the box, and it was filled with gold coins, silver coins, and dragon coins. What's this? A hint of surprise appeared in Novin's eyes as he waved a hand through the air, upon which all of the boxes beside him were opened. The boxes were filled with coins, most of which were gold coins, with silver coins and dragon coins mixed within. The entire room seemed to have become a lot brighter with the golden light emanating from the boxes. Crassus smiled and said, You can take half of the money here to expand the school. Take it as a loan from me. There's no interest, and you're not in a hurry to pay me back. Novin looked at Crassus in silence for a while before lamenting, It's been so many years. I still owe you. Don't worry, I'm not worried about you. You'll definitely pay me back. Crassus waved his hand nonchalantly and pointed at the gold coins as he said, The remaining half is for little Amy. Building a magic academy costs a lot of money. Your name will be recorded in the history of Chaos School, Teacher Crassus. Novin smiled as he turned to walk out of the door and said, I'll get them to do an inventory as soon as possible. If we start construction now, we should be able to finish it before the start of the next semester. Then, we'll be able to enroll more students next year. Sure enough, anything related to the students is more important than anyone else. I wanted him to treat me to a meal. Crassus shook his head with a resigned expression and also left. At the entrance of the City Lord's castle, Gustav turned to Dracula and loudly asked, Dracula, the final agreement has been signed. Toros and I are going back to our race to report on our mission. Would you like to come back with us? There's no need for that. Our relationship isn't good enough for us to go back together, is it? Demons don't have any friends, especially between demons. Dracula looked at Gustav lazily with a smile. That's true. Farewell. Toros nodded before climbing onto the black boar's back. He lashed the boar's back with his whip, and it began to gallop down the street. Farewell. Gustav transformed into his Spider-Man form, and the space around him rippled as he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chapter 491. Meg played with Amy and Ugly Duckling in the small amusement park for the entire afternoon. Although the place wasn't very big, the facilities were all very intricate and small, so it didn't take up too much space. There was a seesaw, a two-seater merry-go-round, bumper cars. There was everything that one could think of, and the father-daughter duo's laughter could be heard from time to time. Amy's hair was plastered to her forehead by sweat, and she looked at Meg with excitement in her eyes as she said, "This is so fun, Father. This amusement park is so fun, and it's purple. It's so beautiful. I have to bring Jessica and Daphne here. They'll definitely love it." "All right, we'll invite them over when they're free." Meg wiped the sweat off Amy's forehead with a smile. He looked at Ugly Duckling, who had just gotten off the merry-go-round, and was completely disoriented. He picked up the two little ones and walked toward the bathroom as he said, "All right, let's stop here for the afternoon. I'll give you two a bath, and then I'll go downstairs to open the shop." "Yay. Amy wants to play with bubbles." Amy yelled excitedly. Meow. Ugly Duckling immediately woke up from its daze upon hearing the word bath. It immediately stared at Meg with wide eyes before twisting its body in an attempt to escape from Meg's grasp. "Ugly Duckling, if you don't take a bath, then don't sleep on my bed tonight." "I don't want to sleep with a dirty guy," Amy warned Ugly Duckling. Meow. Ugly Duckling looked up at Amy, and after a while, it rested its head on Meg's hand with an aggrieved expression, as if it had accepted its fate. "You still have to take a bath," Meg said with a smile. Cats didn't like water or baths, but Amy liked to hug Ugly Duckling all day long, so he was very concerned about Ugly Duckling's hygiene. He washed it once a day. After placing Ugly Duckling into its own little basin, Amy also squatted down and gently splashed water on it. The fluffy Ugly Duckling was instantly drenched and pitiful. After applying the shower gel, only its pitiful little head was left exposed. It suddenly shook its head, and the foam splashed onto the two of them, eliciting a burst of giggles from Amy. After bathing the two little guys and putting on clean clothes, Meg also took a shower and changed into a clean chef's suit before taking them downstairs. Yabamia and Sally were sitting downstairs, looking at each other in silence. It was a little awkward. After getting to know each other better, Yabamia became more talkative, while Sally was more aloof. Most of the time, they just sat there with a glass of water in their hands. "Amy's clothes are so nice today." Upon hearing footsteps, Yabamia and Sally both turned to look at the counter. Yabamia looked at Amy with a smile before waving at Ugly Duckling. "Come here, Ugly Duckling." Ugly Duckling looked up at her before lowering its eyes lazily. It rubbed its little head against Amy's feet and raised its little paws to ask for a hug. "Stay here by yourself. No hugs." Amy shook her head before running over to Yabamia. She raised her arms and said coquettishly, "Big sister Mia, I want a hug." "All right, let's hug our little princess Amy." Yabamia picked up Amy with a smile and sat her down on her lap. "It's so soft and comfortable," Amy murmured as she rested her head on Yabamia's chest. She found a comfortable position and closed her eyes. "Little girl, you're so pretty. You're going to be a great beauty when you grow up." Yabamia looked down at Amy's exquisite face, and her eyelashes fluttered slightly. She was going to be a little beauty now. "Her boobs are really big." Sally looked down at Yabamia's chest and then down at her own. She was instantly a little dejected. Meow. Ugly Duckling sat on the ground and looked at Amy in Yabamia's arms with a pitiful expression. Meg walked into the kitchen with a smile. He liked the harmonious environment of the restaurant the most. Sally and Mia's personalities made him feel comfortable getting along with them. For now, it looked like he wouldn't have to hire any more waiters before the restaurant expanded. Meg was in the kitchen preparing the ingredients for dinner when he suddenly sensed someone behind him. He turned around to find that it was Yabamiya standing in the doorway. "Boss, I'm just looking around," Yabamiya hurriedly said with a panicked expression. "Come in if you want to. The restaurant's business is getting better and better. I was just about to give you the job of making ice cream and filling Ruggiamo. Would you like to do it? If you want to learn other dishes, I can teach you." Meg looked at Yabamiya with a smile. In reality, he couldn't see anything from the doorway, so he was sure that Mia was telling the truth. "You want me to do it?" Yabamiya's eyes immediately lit up. However, she quickly waved her hand and said, "No, boss. I'm very stupid, and I won't be able to do it well. I'll ruin the restaurant's reputation." "How do you know if you can do it well if you don't try? As long as you have a sincere heart to cook for the customers, you'll definitely be able to do it well." Meg looked at her with a smile, and his eyes were filled with encouragement. "Can I really do it?" Yabamiya looked into Meg's eyes, and her gentle gaze was filled with encouragement, just like her mother's. However, she was still a little hesitant. "Of course you can. Mia is a good girl who can take all the orders and serve the dishes." Meg nodded with certainty. "Yes, Big Sister Mia is super awesome. Amy wants to eat Big Sister Mia's ice cream." Amy had appeared at the doorway of the kitchen, and she looked at Yabamiya expectantly. "You can do it. You can do everything well." Sally also looked at Yabamiya with a smile, and her eyes were also filled with encouragement. "Then, can I give it a try?" Yabamiya was suddenly filled with confidence. She took a step forward and looked at Mag as she said, "Don't worry. Of course you can. It's fine even if you don't succeed in 1 or 2 tries. The weather is so hot, so we can have some ice cream." Meg nodded with a smile before leading Yabamiya over to the ice cream machine, and he began to explain to her how to use the machine. Even though the ice cream machine was a high-end machine that was fully automated, it was very simple to operate. All one had to do was to mix all of the ingredients and operate the machine in an idiot-like manner. The most difficult part was to catch the snowball perfectly at the center of the eggshell when it was falling. The second snowball had to land perfectly at the center of the first snowball so that the 2 snowballs would remain stable without destroying each other's shapes. These 2 steps were indeed very technical. At the very least, Meg had practiced many times in the test field for the god of cookery to be able to master them. "Let's try it out first. Focus and press this button, and the ice cream machine will be activated. When the ice cream ball falls, use this eggshell to catch it." Meg picked up an eggshell and began to explain to Yabamiya. Yabamiya stood off to the side with an earnest expression, occasionally asking a question or two. She was used to operating the dishwasher, so she was already immune to the miraculous effects that could be triggered with a single press, so she didn't dwell too much on this topic. "Young master, are you going out?" In the Elven embassy, Ingve was just about to leave when he caught sight of Blower. Chapter 492. Luna. At the gate of Chaos School, Vivian waved at Luna, who had just walked out of the school. School had already ended a while ago, so there weren't many students at the gate. "Why are you dressed like that?" Luna stared blankly at Vivian for a moment before quickly walking up to her. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Have you been smitten by me?" Vivian narrowed her eyes as she looked at Luna. She reached out to hook a finger under Luna's chin as she asked in a low voice. "Not at all." Luna took a nimble step backward to evade Vivian's hand with a smile. "Sigh, women are so fickle. Last time, you said you wanted to be with me, but in the blink of an eye, you've turned your back on me. What am I supposed to do now?" Vivian said with a pained expression, as if she had received a huge blow. "All right, let's hurry up and get going. If we're late, we'll have to wait very long in line." Luna dragged Vivian toward a horse-drawn carriage with a resigned expression as she said, "Besides, we're at the gate of Chaos School, and you're wearing men's clothes. It'll be bad if the students see us like this." "What's wrong with that? Can't a teacher fall in love?" Principal Novin didn't say that students can't fall in love. "Luna, you shouldn't be so old-fashioned. This is Chaos City, not Rodu. You should live freely in the Free City." Vivian looked at Luna with an exasperated expression. "I don't want to fall in love at all. I just want to focus on teaching then pay more attention to those poor children. Besides, there are still many things that I need to do. Luna shook her head. What else do you want to do? Vivian turned to Luna with a question. Luna turned to look at the Chaos School sign, and a smile appeared on her face as she said, there are still many things that I want to do. After I learn how to spread freedom and equality to this world from Principal Novin, I want to go back to Rodu and set up a school to teach the children what equality and freedom are. Mr. Mac's cooking is so delicious. Can you really bear to go back to Rodu? Vivian asked. Luna faltered upon hearing that. She hesitated momentarily before gritting her teeth and saying, I'll definitely go back. That's what I told myself when I chose to stay in Chaos City. This is my dream. When I was dreaming, it was all because of a spicy grilled fish, Vivian replied. I won't lose my dream because of a grilled fish, Luna said with a serious expression. Then let's hurry up and get going. I really miss my delicious grilled fish. Vivian pulled Luna onto the horse-drawn carriage and instructed the coachman to set off. Vivian, what is your dream? My dream, of course. In the past, I just wanted to be a salted fish that didn't need to move. I just wanted to spend the rest of my days lying around. Now that I can live comfortably, there's no need for me to continue lying around. Why don't I become a teacher too? Don't you hate children the most? That's right. I hate children the most. But sometimes, I feel that they're quite cute. I can feel a lot of vitality from children. I quite like them. It was almost time for dinner, and a long line had formed in front of Amy's again. Crassus and Julian hadn't arrived yet, so even though there were occasional conflicts between the sweet and savory factions, they were still quite harmonious overall. Constantine stood at the back of the line, looking around from time to time as if he was looking for someone. Is young Mistress Shirley coming back for dinner tonight? Constantine thought to himself with a conflicted expression. When he had asked for Shirley's contact information at noon, she had completely ignored him and left on a horse-drawn carriage. He was feeling a little frustrated. After flirting with girls for so many years, this was the first time that he had been ignored by a woman like this, and that only served to further ignite his desire to conquer her. However, he had to admit that Shirley gave him a different feeling from the other women he had encountered in the past. He wanted to look up to her and treat her with caution. That horse-drawn carriage. Right at this moment, a horse-drawn carriage drove toward Mamie Restaurant. Constantine's eyes lit up immediately. He recognized this horse-drawn carriage. Miss Shirley had boarded this horse-drawn carriage in the afternoon. His eyes were fixed on the horse-drawn carriage, and he was thinking about what he should do to make her fall in love with him when the person he was thinking about alighted from the horse-drawn carriage. The horse-drawn carriage stopped not far away from Amy's, and Blower strode down the wooden steps in an elegant manner. He looked up at Amy's line, and his gaze fell on Constantine, who was standing at the very back of the line, and he faltered slightly. Why is it that guy again? He's really like a lingering spirit. Blower's brows furrowed. He had been harassed by this guy at noon, and he didn't think that he would encounter him again at night. Was he staying at Amy's? Why is it a male elf? Constantine's eyes also widened with incredulity as he stared at Blower. He clearly remembered that Shirley had boarded this horse-drawn carriage, but a male elf had emerged from it. Even though this male elf was also very handsome and elegant, he was definitely not young Mistress Shirley. He had initially thought that perhaps Shirley would alight from the horse-drawn carriage as they were traveling together. However, the horse-drawn carriage immediately turned around and left, leaving only the male elf behind. Who is this guy? Why did he alight from young Mistress Shirley's horse-drawn carriage? Constantine wore a disappointed expression as he appraised Blower with a serious expression. The more he looked at him, the more peculiar he felt. For some reason, his heart rate was accelerating. What's wrong with me? Why is my heart rate accelerating at the sight of a male elf? This guy is indeed very beautiful, perhaps even more so than some women, but he really is a male elf. No, I must be feeling like this because I'm too disappointed that young Mistress Shirley didn't come, Constantine thought to himself. He took a deep breath to calm himself down before turning to Blower with a smile, and said, "Greetings, sir. May I ask what your relationship with young Mistress Shirley is?" I saw you alight from her horse-drawn carriage. Is young Mistress Shirley coming to the restaurant for dinner tonight? Blower raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. He had initially wanted to pretend that he didn't know this guy, but who would have thought that he would remember his horse-drawn carriage and directly ask about his relationship with Shirley? I'm just curious. I don't mean any harm, Constantine hurriedly said upon seeing Blower's displeased expression. Chapter 493. Many of the customers at the entrance of the restaurant turned to look at Blower. Beautiful young women were quite common, but it was rare to see a man more beautiful than them. Furthermore, he was a beautiful elf, so he immediately attracted the attention of many women. Even the men couldn't help but take a second look at him. Sister? Constantine looked at Blower with a surprised expression. He suddenly discovered that Blower's features did indeed bear some resemblance to Shirley's. If they were siblings, then that would explain why he had come out of Shirley's horse-drawn carriage. That's right. Blower nodded in response. He didn't want to talk to Constantine any further. My name is Constantine. You really do look like young Mistress Shirley. Constantine looked at Blower with a smile. After learning that Blower was Shirley's brother, he was very relieved. At the same time, he began to think about how he could get closer to Blower. Beautiful people all look alike, Blower replied in a calm voice. He didn't really like this guy, but seeing as he had a good eye for beauty, Blower wasn't in a hurry to kill him. Indeed, there are very few elves as beautiful as you and young Mistress Shirley in this world. Constantine nodded with a genuine expression. He was becoming more and more fond of Blower's looks. Perhaps it was because of young Mistress Shirley? He consoled himself in his heart. There are so many people lining up so early in the morning. As expected, business at Mr. Mac's restaurant is booming. I feel like it won't be easy to come here for a meal in the future. The horse-drawn carriage stopped not far away from the restaurant, and Vivian emerged. She heaved a forlorn sigh at the sight of the long line. Mr. Meg's food is worth lining up in advance. That's what all of the customers are thinking. Luna also emerged with a smile. Looks like even our teacher Luna is captivated by Mr. Mac's food. That's a very dangerous sign. Vivian chuckled. I know what I want. You, on the other hand, don't lose yourself over a grilled fish. Luna looked at Vivian with a smile. I don't even want a child. How can I become a stepmother? You don't have to worry about that. Vivian said nonchalantly. She jumped down from the carriage and held Luna's hand as she got off. This year's oranges seem to be growing quite well. Also, it should be the peak season for picking oranges, right? Luna glanced at an old farmer who was sitting down with 2 baskets of oranges not far away. Vivian looked at Luna and patted her on the shoulder. I'm going to buy some oranges. Stay here and don't move. It's okay. Aren't we here to eat? Luna said with a smile, but Vivian was already walking towards the old farmer. She could only stand there helplessly. Vivian knew that she liked to eat oranges. The oranges are not bad, and they're cheap, so I bought some more. You can take them back later. Vivian soon returned with a basket of oranges. She took 2 of them and put the rest back into the carriage. She handed one of the oranges to Luna. Thank you, Luna said with a smile as she looked at the orange in her hand. The golden orange was about the size of an adult's fist. Its skin was golden and smooth, and there was a small green leaf at the top. It was obvious that it had just been picked. The skin was peeled off easily, and thin white strands were drawn out from the surface of the orange. The thin, tender skin was wrapped around the reddish-golden orange flesh. The sweet and sour scent of the orange wafted over, and just looking at it made one's mouth water. Luna gently peeled off a piece of the orange. The translucent orange flesh could be seen through the light, and she could clearly see the plump orange flesh inside. She put it to her mouth and took a bite. Plump orange juice flowed out from the flesh of the orange, and a hint of sourness instantly spread through her mouth. It was as if she had been placed in an orange forest. At a glance, there were yellow oranges all over the mountains. The aura of autumn became extremely clear in that instant, and she couldn't help but relax. She wanted to feel the wind and the delicious orange in her mouth. It's so sweet and delicious. Luna opened her eyes and looked at Vivian with a happy smile on her face. Then eat more. There are still plenty of oranges left. Vivian also smiled. There was a hint of sympathy in her eyes as she looked at Luna. She was a well-bred young lady, but she couldn't even bear to eat oranges. When would this little girl treat her better? Luna nodded. She also placed the remaining half of the orange in her hand into her mouth with a blissful smile on her face. Vivian silently peeled the orange in her hand before placing it in Luna's hand. After eating 2 oranges, Luna turned to Vivian and said, "I feel like I'm almost full." "That won't do. I was going to treat you to a sumptuous meal tonight. If you're only full after eating 2 oranges, that would be a huge loss." Vivian raised an eyebrow as she led Luna toward the back of the line. "Look, that elf is so beautiful. He's even more beautiful than a young lady." The two of them were at the very back of the line, and Vivian immediately caught sight of Blower. She whispered to Luna, "Indeed, he really is very handsome." Luna took a glance at Blower and was also a little stunned by his beauty. He had long golden hair and a set of handsome features. The fact that he could be described as beautiful was a testament to just how stunningly handsome he was. Blower seemed to have sensed someone looking at him from behind, and he turned around. His gaze lingered on Vivian for a while. This man was quite handsome, but he was giving off a strange feeling. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. Perhaps it was a type of mutual attraction between good-looking men. Or perhaps there was something about this man that piqued his interest. What is he trying to do? Vivian glared back at Blower at the sight of him staring at her. There were countless good-looking men in the world, and she wasn't infatuated enough to fall in love with every single one of them. Blower withdrew his gaze. He didn't want to waste any time on irrelevant people. This fellow actually dares to ignore me? Vivian raised an eyebrow. She was quite uncomfortable being stared at, but she was also quite displeased to be ignored. She was struck by the urge to beat someone up. Whoosh! A gust of wind swept up, and a massive bat that obscured the entire sky appeared in the air above the Aiden Square. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived in the air above Mama's. It withdrew its wings and transformed into a man in black. He looked down at the line with furrowed brows, and then turned his gaze to the line at the very front with a smile as he murmured to himself, "I'm a 9th-tier vampire, so I should be able to cut in line, right? You want to cut in line?" Julian had just made his way over to Mama's when he raised his head to look at Dracula, who was about to land at the very front of the line. Julian pursed his lips. He wasn't angry at Crassus' words at all. Instead, he appeared to be very confident. His words created quite a stir among the customers. How long had it been since Julian and Crassus had accepted a disciple? AI Mi's strength had improved so quickly that she was most likely going to break one record after another in the magic world. As expected of someone whom the Lord of Ice and the Lord of Fire were fighting over to take in as their disciple, even going as far as to set aside their century-old grudge to take in. When that time comes, 6th-tier magic casters will already be trembling under little Amy's magic caster's staff. Crassus also didn't back down. He walked to the front of the sweet team. Who knows? Julian chuckled coldly. He stood in front of the savory team. His icy aura clashed with the fiery aura of the sweet and savory team, and the atmosphere between the sweet and savory teams became tense again. An elven brat? Dracula was quite relieved that Crassus and Julian weren't targeting him. He glanced at Blower as he passed by him, and murmured to himself with a hint of surprise in his eyes, "It sure is rare to see a self-proclaimed demon." Blower looked at Dracula with a hint of mockery in his eyes. "Are you talking about me, little brat?" Dracula stopped in his tracks and raised his chin to look at Blower with a disdainful expression as he said, "Do vampires have noble bloodlines? Among demons, we only drink blood, and our actions are noble and graceful." "Is that so? I heard that there was a vampire who was forced by the elven princess to eat grass for several days on Demon Island. That must be one of the elven gentleman vampires who only drink fresh blood, right? Blower asked Dracula with a curious expression. All of the customers around them were trying to suppress their laughter. Even though they didn't know whether Blower was telling the truth, they couldn't help but burst into laughter at the thought of a vampire being forced to eat grass. That little brat even knows about something like that? Dracula glared at Blower. However, if he were to admit to this at a time like this, he would be too ashamed to eat in this restaurant in the future. As such, his expression quickly returned to normal, and he cleared his throat as he said, "How could something like that happen? Even if it did happen, it definitely wouldn't be a vampire, and it definitely wouldn't be me." "Is that so?" Blower looked at Dracula with a skeptical expression. Why was this guy in such a hurry to draw a line between himself and him? "Of course it's true. Us vampires have extremely strong self-esteem and character. We definitely wouldn't eat grass," Dracula replied with a firm expression. "Then what flavor do you eat for tofu pudding?" Constantine suddenly asked. "Of course it's salty." Dracula looked at the smiles on everyone's faces and suddenly felt as if he had been completely humiliated. Chapter 495. The restaurant entrance instantly fell silent. All of the customers looked on with peculiar expressions as Amy sat down with Ugly Duckling in her arms and rested her chin on the kitten's head with an expectant look on her face. Even though they were already used to Amy sitting on a stool and cheering them on, they still felt rather conflicted when they heard her say those words with a hint of disappointment in her eyes. They felt as if their debate for the sake of their beliefs had turned into a performance. Amy looked at the silent customers and pondered for a while before turning to Crassus and Julian with a curious look on her face. "Master Halfbeard, Master Turtle, which one of you is more powerful?" All of the customers standing behind Crassus and Julian immediately took a few steps back. Everyone was also rather curious. Crassus and Julian had been rivals for over 100 years, and they were now the leaders of the sweet and savory factions, so everyone was very curious to see which one of them was more powerful. "Little Amy, what do you think? You used the melee magic that I taught you to defeat your most powerful opponent today." Crassus wasn't in a hurry to express his opinion. Instead, he turned to Amy with a question. "But Master Halfbeard, didn't I use long-range magic to defeat him in the end?" Amy looked at Crassus with an innocent expression. Crassus' expression immediately stiffened upon hearing this. "Did you see that?" Even little Amy said that long-range magic is the most powerful. "Crassus, your melee magic is nothing." Julian turned to Crassus with a smug look on his face. "But Master Turtle, I used the fireball magic that Master Halfbeard taught me," Amy said with a smile. Julian's eyes widened. He didn't think that something like this would happen. "So, I think Master Halfbeard's melee magic is super powerful, and Master Turtleshell's Flames of Extreme Frost is also super powerful. However, I don't know which one is more powerful," Amy said with a conflicted expression. "This little guy is really too naughty. He's trying to provoke a fight between two great magicians. However, I'm also looking forward to it. I've never seen two great magicians fight before," Vivian said with a smile. Amy isn't trying to sow discord. Her performance in the duel today was nothing short of stunning. Both her long-range magic and melee magic are superb. If I were her, I would definitely struggle over which one is better. Luna shook her head with a smile. She had personally witnessed Amy's stunning performance today. Who was the little guy's mother? How could she have such powerful aptitude? There's no magic aura emanating from that shop owner's body, so there's no way he's a magic caster. In that case, the only possibility is that she inherited her aptitude from her mother. There's no other elf with such aptitude. In fact, even her highness is inferior to her. Blower looked at Amy with furrowed brows, and he was suddenly very curious about who Amy's mother was. Ice-type magic is naturally the most powerful. Little Amy, you've already mastered the Flames of Extreme Frost. Now, I'm going to teach you true ice-type magic. The frost dragon manifested from ice and frost is undeniably powerful. Julian looked at Amy with an earnest expression, and a frosty aura surged toward the Crassus like a sharp sword. That's just for show. Little Amy, I'm going to teach you even more powerful melee magic now. Regardless of whether your opponent is a magic caster or a knight, you'll only need to use a single strike of your staff to defeat them. Crassus was also guiding her patiently. He stomped his foot lightly, and a wall of fire rose up around him, which easily kept the sword of ice at bay. All of the customers in the back retreated even further away in fear of being caught in the crossfire. The situation became even more tense. The aura released by a great magic caster was extraordinarily powerful. Even though the magic was restricted to a certain range, the fact that it could erupt at any moment made everyone feel very nervous. It's time for business. Welcome. Right at this moment, the restaurant's door was opened, and Meg emerged with a smile on his face. He patted Amy's head and thought to himself, this little guy really loves to stir up trouble. However, to be honest, he was also quite curious about who was more powerful between Julian and Crassus. If it weren't for the fact that he was worried that a fight between them would accidentally destroy the restaurant, he would have joined in to sow discord between them. Then let's eat. Amy scooted her little stool over to the side and made a mischievous face at Meg. Humph. Crassus and Julian harumphed in unison before withdrawing their auras and making their way into the restaurant. Mr. Blower and I hit it off right away. Would I have the honor of sitting with you later? Constantine turned to Blower with an expectant look on his face. You can sit wherever you want, Blower replied in an indifferent manner. As expected, they really are siblings. Even their tones and attitudes are so similar. However, it seems like Mr. Blower is more approachable. Constantine wasn't displeased by Blower's attitude in the slightest. He nodded with a smile and said, Sure. The customers made their way into the restaurant, and Amy quickly noticed Blower. Her eyes lit up as she said, You're so handsome, big brother. A smile appeared on Blower's face. It was very pleasing to be praised for his beauty, and he was just about to say something. It's a pity that he's a male elf. If only he were a beautiful big sister. Amy heaved a forlorn sigh. What's wrong with male elves? Why can't male elves be beautiful? Blower's eyes widened. He didn't think that he would be looked down upon because of his gender. He had clearly been praising himself over and over again during the afternoon. Pfft, this little girl is so funny. Vivian laughed out loud. She was overjoyed. Teacher Luna. Amy caught sight of Luna and immediately stood up with Ugly Duckling in her arms. She then turned to Vivian with a curious expression and asked, Big Brother Mustache, why are you with Teacher Luna? Because I'm good friends with your teacher Luna, so we came to eat together. Are you going to give us a discount, little boss? Vivian turned to Amy with a smile. Of course not, but you can pay for Teacher Luna. That's what all men should do, right? Amy looked at Vivian with a serious expression. How could there be such a sly little girl? Vivian raised an eyebrow. She didn't think that she would fall for Amy's tricks. Then I won't hold back. A smile also appeared on Luna's face as she looked at Vivian. She was just as elated as Luna about the spicy grilled fish being able to cure Vivian's illness. In the past, it was very rare to see a smile on Vivian's face. She was only 19 years old, but she was like an old woman in the dead of old. The torturous pain she had to endure every night had taken a huge toll on her. However, it was as if she had become a completely different person. She was rejuvenated and even wanted to become a teacher. Sally was in complete disbelief that Vivian, who had once hated children, was doing something like this. That's right. The spicy grilled fish is my favorite. Vivian nodded with excitement. She thought to herself momentarily before turning to Luna and saying, How about we try the insanely spicy grilled fish today? I refuse. Luna shook her head without any hesitation. Her palate was on the bland side. She had only eaten a little spicy grilled fish during the restaurant gathering, and even just the medium spicy grilled fish was too much for her to handle. She couldn't even imagine the insanely spicy grilled fish. All right, then how about we order the super spicy grilled fish? Vivian changed the subject. All right, then let's order the super spicy grilled fish. Luna nodded with a smile at the sight of Vivian's expectant expression. Chapter 497. I really want to eat tofu pudding, but if I order it now, I'll definitely be laughed at by that little elf. What should I do? This is so annoying. Dracula looked at Blower with a conflicted expression. He glanced at the image of the tofu pudding on the menu, and he could already feel himself salivating. He shouldn't be able to hear me if I speak quietly, right? After hesitating for a long while, Dracula finally made up his mind. He gestured for Yabamiya to come over and whispered, I'll have a savory tofu pudding and a braised chicken and rice. All right, please wait a moment. Yabamiya nodded with a smile. She had a very deep impression of this vampire demon, who had been exposed as a vegetarian for many days during the negotiations between the dragons and demons. Uncle Bat, did you order the savory tofu pudding? It's a pity that the restaurant doesn't have any grass. Amy appeared beside Dracula with a smile on her face. All of the surrounding customers turned to look at Dracula with intrigue in their eyes. He had said that he definitely wasn't a vegetarian, but the tofu pudding was made from soybeans, so it was still a vegetarian dish. This little guy is a demon. He's just like that guy from back then. A demon even more terrifying than a demon. Dracula stared at Amy with wide eyes. He could see the figure of another elf in her smile, and it left an indelible mark on his memory. There are a few small shrimps in the savory tofu pudding, and I actually ordered it for those small shrimps. Of course, as a gentleman, I definitely won't waste food. Dracula cleared his throat with a serious expression. A vegetarian vampire sure is rare. Blower also turned to look at Dracula with a hint of a smile on his face. Little guy, why have you been so hostile toward me from the very beginning? I don't think we've met before. Dracula was a little perplexed as he looked at Blower with narrowed eyes. As a demon and a vampire patriarch, he also had his own bottom line and temper. All of the customers turned to Blower with concern in their eyes. Even though they were laughing along with him, no one dared to openly mock Dracula. After all, the fact that he dared to fly in the air above Chaos City indicated that he was at least at the 8th tier. He should be a level 7 magician, while Dracula is a level 9 magician. If the two of them were to clash, Dracula would have no chance of winning. Sally was also looking at Dracula with a concerned expression. She didn't have a good impression of demons, and even though she didn't know Blower, she definitely didn't want him to be bullied by demons. Does the enmity between elves and demons need any other reason? A hint of mockery appeared on Blower's face as he continued. During the war among species, the demons and the orcs invaded the Wind Forest. Do you have any idea how many elves were slaughtered? Some things can be forgotten with the passage of time, but in some people's hearts, they will never be forgotten. Very well, I accept that reason. So I'll allow you to treat me with this attitude. Dracula looked at Blower with a hint of surprise on his face, and nodded after a brief moment of silence. Will it never be forgotten? A contemplative look appeared on Sally's face as she looked at Blower. She had some knowledge of the history of the war among species. At the beginning of the war, the elven race was almost completely wiped out. Only then did they slowly resist the demons and orcs under the leadership of their queen, and after several centuries, they finally regained control over the Wind Forest. Something like that definitely won't happen again. The elven race is now more powerful than ever, Sally thought to herself. With the powerful elven army under their command, the elven race was already powerful enough to oppose any other race, and they didn't have to worry about the Wind Forest being conquered again. In that case, it looks like he's most likely from the Wind Forest. I wonder if he's going to spread the news about me? Sally looked at Blower with a hint of nervousness in her heart. You really are a gentleman. Blower looked at Dracula for a while before turning away and falling silent. Of course I'm a gentleman. I'm the most gentlemanly vampire in this world. Dracula nodded with a smug expression. Then you're very handsome, Uncle Bat, Amy said with a smile. I like your honest praise, little girl. Dracula nodded with a pleased expression as he looked at Amy. But you're still a far cry from my father, Amy said with a smile. So, should I still be happy? Dracula's expression was a little peculiar. As expected, this little girl never played by the rules. I think so. Amy nodded. All right, I'm very happy. Dracula looked at the departing figures of Crassus and Julian and forced a smile onto his face as he nodded. The dishes arrived one after another, and all of the customers began to enjoy the food. Constantine had been trying to find a topic to talk about, but Blower was simply too cold and aloof. Just like Shirley, it was as if he were invisible, and Constantine didn't know what to say. Blower finished his food in silence. Even though this was only his second time eating it, he was still stunned by the delicious food that he had ordered. Blower put down his spoon and looked at his empty plate. He tidied up his clothes and raised his hand as he said, "Check, please. Let me do it. It's my treat today." Constantine hurriedly stuffed the remaining half of his Ruggiamo into his mouth before pulling out his money pouch. "I'm Blower, bye, Billy." Blower stood up and handed a dragon coin to Sally. Sally's hand instantly stiffened, and her eyes widened as she looked at Blower. The water elements around her became a little chaotic, as if they were about to erupt. "Don't be in such a hurry. I'm not here to fight with you today." "If you don't mind, perhaps we can talk after the restaurant closes tonight." Blower looked at Sally with a calm expression. Sally looked at Blower with a meaningful expression and hesitated momentarily before the blue light around her hand receded. The water elements around her also receded, and she accepted the dragon coin from Blower. She placed a gold coin back into his hand and nodded as she said, "All right, then I'll wait for you." Blower withdrew his hand and turned toward the restaurant. I'll pay the bill as well." Constantine looked on with a dumbstruck expression. He was still unable to process what was going on. Blower had just been asking him about Aisha, so why was he suddenly acting as if he were very familiar with Aisha? However, he still quickly paid the bill and hurried out of the restaurant. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.